Welcome to the Eclectic Gentleman podcast, where we dive into anything and everything, from history's most fascinating stories to the mind-blowing possibilities of tomorrow. We seek out and connect with the average guy walking down the street, and more often than not, we find out that the average guy is not so average. I'm Zach, and joining me, as always, is my co-host and good friend Heath. Heath, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this one.
Good. You can catch all the action on our YouTube channel, but if you're on the move, we got you covered there too. You can listen to us just about anywhere podcasts are hosted. Do us a favor, like, follow, engage. We actually message back. And who knows, you may even snag yourself a spot in our lineup of eclectic trailblazers. With all that out of the way, let's get rolling with our latest installment. Joining us today is a man who wears many hats. He's a podcaster, a comedian, a marketing and advertising professional. He's a college instructor, a political lobbyist, and an advocate for the therapeutic use of psilocybin. And I'm sure we're going to learn a hell of a lot more, too, over the next couple of hours. Tim Hamilton, welcome to Eclectic Gentleman.
See, I thought this was Electric Gentleman, so I'm a little unprepared now. Eclectic, gotcha. All right, I'm going to have to do a quick reset and we'll be fine.
All right, we're good.
Now, in all fairness, a lot of the stuff you said is kind of in the past, but you know, we're all some of our experiences. So,
well, that's what we're about. Is we're trying to uncover the breadth of people's lives.
At least the average guy, I am super average.
It looked like it had been a minute since you updated your LinkedIn profile.
I haven't done that for a while. I was just that's on my list. I live my life by timers on my phone. So I have like literally like 40 timers go off, and some of them are recurring, like tasks I have to do, and I keep hitting snooze. So by the end of the day, it's just this endless stream of like alarms going off, and my wife is just going to lose her shit by the end of it. And on there is update my LinkedIn, and that's been going on for about 9 months now. I don't know. I don't like LinkedIn that much. I don't like. Do you guys ever go on that?
Yes.
Does anybody?
A little bit every day.
I feel like the people who do LinkedIn are like super into LinkedIn.
Yes.
And there's people like me. People send me messages on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, I messaged you on LinkedIn. I'm like, I haven't checked it since like 2007.
It's a little spammy.
Yes,
it's super spammy.
Yeah.
Do you know how many emails I get? Because I own a LLC, and I get, no lie, like 50 salespeople a day who are trying to get me to sell my business or write a book. I'm a onesie. I'm not that interesting to write a book. And I have like 8 clients. Then they're all on the side.
I'd read your book.
They want to get paid.
Ramble.
Paid to help you write a book. That's what they want, right?
Yeah. That's all. So I don't. All the social media. I've gotten really good with it. I've gotten off. I've taken all that stuff off my phone, so it's not. So when I'm sitting in the toilet, that I'm not like going through Facebook or the rest of the stuff. So I've taken anything that's even mildly interesting off my phone. I've done that for the last year, just to save my sanity. And Facebook is, I'm Gen X, so I mean that's the only thing I really do. And I got off Twitter like 5 years ago just to save my sanity, and because I was trying out jokes, because I still do comedy and everything here now and again. And I thought, well, I'm going to test out some jokes on Twitter, just kind of tweak them. And then a lot of the comics I follow, they started turning, because I'm like left of center. I'm not far left, like I'm not putting pronouns in my email, but I'm left of center. But I just noticed like all these comics that I followed who were mostly left, they're becoming these raging lunatics on Twitter, and they weren't funny anymore. And I thought, oh, I'm becoming that same thing. So I got off, and then after a while I kind of missed it, because you need that dopamine when you open up your phone and you're scrolling through stuff. And so I got on Threads when that released a couple of years ago, and
right.
Threads was really fun at the time because it wasn't super left, but it was lefty enough that it wasn't quite an echo chamber, but you didn't have all the trolls that were popping in on Twitter. But then after like a couple months, I was like, I'm ranting here now too. So I had to get off Threads, and then Blue Sky came around. I started an account, and after a day, I'm like, nope, this is exactly. It's just, I don't think there's any social media that's mentally healthy. It's just not.
Not yet. It needs. I don't know what it needs, but it needs something.
I don't think it's possible. Yeah. I don't think it is. Our brains aren't built for this.
Yeah.
You ever heard Dunbar's number?
No. What's that?
Dunbar's number is, I forget the anthropologist came up with it. It's the number of people who would live in the tribes or the bands of people 20, 30,000 years ago, and the theory is that that's the number of relationships that we can maintain, and we can't grasp much beyond.
I think I have heard this before.
So it's 150.
Yeah. So I have heard this before.
So the thing is, you're supposed to be able to have 150 relationships, and you're supposed to gossip about people because gossip, that there's a value to that, because you're supposed to know about everybody in your group, who's sleeping with who who killed the mammoth. You have to know everything, but we're built that we can only keep track of that number. So the theory is that that's how big our bands were back in the day. We're about 150. So it's sort of like now we have this vestigial, like we think we're so sophisticated, but we're still just apes. And so we can only still keep track of 150 people. We're not designed to have 1,000 Facebook friends and all these
or
relationships. We're not supposed to be, connecting with the people that we went to grade school with. People come in and out of your lives, and we're supposed to. That's supposed to happen, right? Yeah. I don't think it's healthy to do this. We're just not built for this, and that's where I think depression and mental health, mental issues come from. Is just our brains aren't built for social media.
Yeah, reconnecting with my past sometimes is like. You have to remember you're not that guy anymore.
Yeah, you're different, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be a different guy. Like, most people, I went to college, I reinvented myself because no one knows what a loser you were in high school. So you get to college and you can reinvent yourself. So when you had your college friends and your high school friends start, seeing the post, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to see, the guy who got shoved in the locker in 1984, but that guy's still inside, but I don't know. I just don't think we're designed for this. I think we're supposed to have certain relationships that last a certain amount of time, and then you move on. But we get those dopamine rushes from all that. But I just don't think we're built for this. So like when you said we don't have a social media yet, what do you think that we need in a social medium that would have any value?
I think it has value, but I agree with all the detractors you're talking about too.
It's Lord of the Flies. It's just, if you drop people like boys on an island, they're going to revert to this violent, primeval sort of temperament that we evolved out of. And I feel that's what social media is all about now. People just get so nasty so quick.
Well, there's definitely engagement trolls, and they're not helpful.
Just contrarian, like.
Oh yeah. They're trying to get more followers by being contrarians. That's all they're after is engagement, and they're trying to fire people up because that's the easiest way to
they get
suck
paid.
them in. And I think what's going to happen over a short period of time, short compared to how long we've been around, probably long compared to our lifespan. But I think what's going to happen is people are going to start to wise up to it, and they're just going to start blocking that kind of shit out.
Well, I don't
everything's going to get more civil, and they're going to spend time with the people on social media. Like we just had a reunion for Boy Scouts. It's I haven't seen most of these guys in over 30 years, but it was incredibly positive.
Yeah, friends like that you pick up right where you left off, though.
Yeah,
I think those kind of guys.
Yeah, that was incredible, and I don't think it would have happened without social media.
Yeah, that's true. During the pandemic too, like I connected with a lot of high school guys that I'd forgotten about.
Same.
And some of the guys I wasn't friends with. Like I went to school over in Wheaton. There was good counsel, and it was talking about being a different person. There's a bunch of us. There's probably about 40 of us on the call. It's like 2020, so we were in the middle of the shit.
Yeah.
And it was guys like I didn't hang around with, and I saw them in the hall and stuff. Like they were the cool guys. I was like the what do you call that? The non-playable character or whatever. I was like in the back.
NPC.
Yeah. That's how I wasn't a nerd. But I was indistinct. I kind of blast. I was a late bloomer.
Did you go from click to click to click? Because
No.
I did.
No,
I hung out with the
with the back in high school. Yeah, that was me.
And
I was
then
a drifter.
I hung out with the guys who were the geeks and the chess club guys, and because I was interested in all that stuff, and I was like, I wasn't really interested in like pushing people away.
Yeah, and I'm the same way, but it was kind of funny when we all got together. There was guys that I saw that I'm like, I didn't know you that well then, and I really wish I did because you're pretty cool, man. And there's one guy who showed up, Tony, and he was an ass to everybody. He was just out of control. Like he wasn't in any group. He was a destroyer. He was awful. And he showed up in the middle of this, and everyone kind of froze. And he goes, "Hey guys," he goes, "I know what you're thinking." And he goes, "Let me just tell you, I know what an asshole I was in high school, and I'm not that same person anymore. And he goes, I was going through a personal hell at the time. My family life was miserable. He goes, it's not an excuse. It's just a reason. And if you want me to get off this call right now, he goes, no hard feelings. I'll get off. He goes, but I just want you to know I'm a totally different person. And everyone shrugged. What are you going to do? I mean, even if you wanted him off, you didn't want to be one to say it.
Yeah.
And he turned out, he was awesome, man. He was an awesome dude. And I just loved that. Stuck with me.
People do change.
It's not an excuse. It's a reason. And I use that like it was my own phrase now sometimes.
Well, and some of the things I found out about people after, like 5 or 10 years after high school, like what they were going through. It was like, oh man, I had no idea, I'm
going to bring down the podcast now. So when I was in grade school, I grew up in Bethesda, but it was before it was the snobatorium it is now. This was, 70s, 80s. So it was working class is a stretch, but it was normal. It was inner suburb and it was a lot quieter. Anyway, there were these 2 girls who went to my grade school, and one was a year younger and one was a year older. And the one who was younger was weird. She had like braids that went down to below her knees, and she was like a wild child. She was like feral. And she was just so crazy that no one even made fun of her. No one picked on her because she was just so out there. And
sounds like one of the characters from Breakfast Club.
She was, but she was just so loopy. So I remember when I was in 7th grade, she would have been 6th grade. And her father just stepped in front of the red line, the metro, and he died. That was, and then like a week later, her mother overdosed. And they lived on a house that was about 3 blocks away, and we passed it on the way to the park.
Yeah.
And the girls disappeared. And we found out later that, he was doing some horrible things, and the cops found out and they came to visit him, and he's like, nope. And so he noped out of that, and his wife, whatever reason she had. And so years later, I was on Facebook, and I just ended up being friends with her. I wasn't close friends with her. She was friends with my sister, and she's an artist now, and she writes poetry and stuff. And she wrote this blog, and I don't think anybody. She goes, I was out today with my kids in the snow, and I smelled the cold of air, and I smelled the snow, and it reminded me when I was 13, and I had to go live with my aunt and uncle for a while out in wherever it was, some rural area. Now, everyone reading this, they don't know why that happened, and I knew why it was happening. And she said, and I remember I was out in the woods barefoot in the winter, just trying to figure stuff out, and it started to snow, and I could smell the snow, and she was just talking about how she kind of found peace in the moment or whatever. So anyone reading that doesn't understand the context of it. But I just thought about that is that, now I take my kids, back to my mom's house, and we'll walk down to the park, and we walk by this house, and I'll see like this happy family with their little kids, and they're outside playing, and I'm like, they don't understand what a house of horrors that was for somebody. For them, it's that's their childhood house, and it's nothing but happy memories. But so sort of like you said, Keith, that you don't know what people are going through. I often wonder if I walk by a house, just was that a house where just horrible things happen? Because I'm not spiritual. I'm not superstitious, so I don't believe in energy or all that stuff. But I'm just wondering, like in this house that we're in right now, which looks like a high tech, like treehouse, by the way. But you have a beautiful view of the bay out there with the sun setting as we're doing this, and it's I could hang here for a while. But was there time back in the '60s where something horrible happened here, and but you have good memories here, it just. And again, I don't believe in the energies that hang in a house, but it just. We're here for a short time, and things happen before us and things happen after us, and these houses and these places are just witness to all that. But I often think about. You said you don't know what people went through, and you don't know. Yeah. It's and anyone reading that blog post by this woman who looks like she's happy now, and I'm so relieved because what she went through was so horrible. But and
it's unfortunate too because we do things like put people down or negative things to other people because of how negative we're feeling, and we just want to feel a little bit better than somebody else. And I think one of the things that social media is going to do is it's going to make everybody realize that they're propping themselves up on other people's downsides. Yeah. Right. And that's not really helpful to them. It's allowing them to be stuck in a mindset that they should probably leave behind.
Are you on Reddit?
I am.
I love Reddit.
I love Reddit too.
I will never give up Reddit. because there's a lot of good stuff that happens with that. But I was in today, and I was on the subreddit for Annapolis, and it was about the we're recording this. I don't know when it gets released, but tomorrow is going to be the No Kings protests around the country, and there's going to be one here in Annapolis. And I'm a big First Amendment guy. I happen to agree with it, but I mean, if it was a MAGA protest for something, I support that too. I'm a big First Amendment guy. But there's one guy in there who was just trolling, and he was so nasty. Like, he wasn't even like, I disagree with you, like, because I believe, I fall into the trap too.
Just doing engagement.
Yeah, well, it was more than that, because I do what you probably do too, is when you see someone who's being an ass, you go through their history to see what's what.
Yeah, does this guy have a history of being an asshole?
And it was more than that. He was posting a lot on these subreddits about drinking, and it was him just saying he was trying to get a control of his drinking, and he just seems like he's miserable. And Keith, that goes to what you said, is that I felt kind of sympathetic to him, going, all right, he's just venting, he's just lashing out and letting the world know he exists. And it's so
empathy.
And it's hard.
A lot of my life in the last 5 years has been coming around to just like having to figure out that I need more empathy for myself so that I can have it for other people.
Yeah, I was seeing I had severe depression for a long time, and I tried everything. And one of the things I talked to was a therapist, and at one point she said to me, she goes, if someone talked to you the way you talk about yourself, you'd break their nose. Yeah. And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, she's right. I had
an inner dialogue for years that was not good. Like, I would not be friends with that person, and yet I was stuck with that person when I woke up, when I went to bed, when I was dreaming.
You ever wonder why?
Yeah. It's just...
Is it like your dad, or is it like...
No. I had great parents. They're not perfect. But compared to some of the people I was friends with in high school and the parents that they had, and they're good people too. It's like, I think it's just the way that people deal or not deal. It's like one of the things that we used to be motivated by was like, get your lazy ass up and do stuff. And that's not a good way to motivate people.
Well, think about that.
That's like, why are you avoiding these? I listen to a lot of Modern Wisdom by Chris Williamson, and he talks about these things, and he digs deep into this stuff, and it's just really weird, the things that we grab onto in order to motivate us. And I had used a lot of negative for motivation over the years.
Like what?
Well, I wasn't prepared for that question. I would have to say, just like like I was watching this new series, Murderbot, and this one guy he leaves the mic open, he starts talking about how dumb he was, and oh, you idiot, you should have known better. And he's talking to himself, because he said something stupid, right? And it's just so juvenile to be that way towards yourself. It's like we get to a certain threshold, and then we stop growing. And I think that's what it is. It's like a lack of gaining of maturity. Like, we start to get through life, we start to get by, and we think, okay, I'm an adult now. Oh, really? You're done growing? And I think that's what I did.
Yeah, but where does the negativity come from? Are you the same way?
I don't know. I'm like sitting here going like, am I just not that deep? Because I never really had like that kind of inner dialogue like that.
Well,
not to interrupt, but I just don't think Zach is that negative. Well, one of the things I love about Zach is he's got this positive view on...
I mean, I can get negative, but like my inner self, I guess I wasn't super comfortable when I was a little kid, but since I've gotten older, I don't know. I'm pretty much at peace, man.
What were your parents like?
My father was very eclectic. He just was into a lot of different stuff, but he was a great guy. I mean,
a good dad?
Great dad. We were super close. We got to be friends as we were older.
All right, now wait a minute. Now let's go. What about your mom?
My mom, my dad passed away like 20 some years ago. My mom and I super tight.
God, you're frustratingly normal.
Yeah,
and healthy.
I mean, However, like my dad collected, I grew up with a dead gangster's body in my house. He had 52 human shrunken heads.
Wait, go back to the first one.
A dead gangster's body. So,
Yeah, that smell? I know this.
No, he was embalmed in arsenic. So he didn't really, I mean, he smelled kind of like mothballs almost.
Oh, as you do. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, he was like a mummy. He was just, but not like a wrapped mummy.
What did you do? What did your dad do for a living?
He just dealt in really crazy shit. But he was a salesman of janitorial supplies. That was his day job, and then he did all this other stuff on the side.
I think that's the key, and I think that's what we're so defined by our jobs. And your dad cracked that, where this is just how I pay bills. You know, so I stopped doing that. Like I hate like the neighborhood like cocktail parties, like happy hours, because first of all I don't drink anymore, and by choice, by the way, no program or anything. But it was I just hate the small talk. And people, it always goes to, so where do you work? And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't want to know about where you work. I don't want to know about what
That's
you
what
do.
this podcast is about.
Yeah, it's just, so
We're
your
trying
dad.
to get people to understand that the people that they're walking by every day, they're not boring.
No.
The problem is that you're boring.
Some are.
You know what I mean? If you think other people are boring, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I think just, I was talking to someone from Europe, and which I don't believe in completely. They're like, oh, we never talk about what we do. That doesn't define who you are. I'm like, oh, you're so sophisticated. But yeah, I wish we could get to that point, because I don't care. I just want to do a cocktail party where you don't have to do, it's the same thing. How's work? Good. Busy, but busy. Yeah. And then how are the kids? Good. They're busy too. I just want to go, hey, what do you think about the Loch Ness Monster? Do you think that it's really possible that it's in two cubic miles of space? And people just look at you like, what? Going, yeah, I mean, isn't that more interesting to talk about the Loch Ness Monster than your sales job?
Way more interesting.
Way more interesting.
The Loch Ness Monster is interesting.
In fact, one of the reasons that we got together is because Zach and I were going to this yoga group during the pandemic, and we're really good friends with everybody that was going there at the time, and we go out and we talk about weird stuff all the time.
I love that stuff.
One of the guys I'd consider him a master sailor. One guy, he basically... He builds satellites like I do, but he's more involved in the actual engineering of it. And he's constantly going out and flying over the salt plains and whatnot to do testing and stuff like that. And now he's a fireman too. And then what do they call ambulance guys?
Paramedics.
Yeah, he's a paramedic. Yeah. So
ambulance guys. Someone call an ambulance guy.
Jacob is one of the most interesting people on the planet, without a doubt. Roger is, and then another guy that we met at the place we're at now, which is Jim. He's a pediatrician, and Jim is. We found out he was. We call him Henry Hill now. You remember the Goodfellas? Yeah. So he has this background in New York where his dad sent him to Greece to get him away from the wise guys in New York because he was getting in to be too good of friends with them all. It's one of our podcasts, so it's really pretty interesting.
Speaking of Henry Hill, did you ever see? You saw Goodfellas, obviously.
Yeah,
right.
Which was but did you ever see My Blue Heaven?
Oh man,
yes.
Okay.
Steve Martin, yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So that was written and directed by, or I don't know if it was directed, it was written by Nora Ephron. And she was married to, I forget who it was, but the guy who helped Henry Hill write his book, was Wise Guys at the time. So she was friends with Henry Hill. So she did the script based on him, My Blue Heaven, which came out a couple months before Goodfellas. So those are two movies about Henry Hill, and it just happened to be just two different takes.
Well,
really?
Now I'm going to rewatch.
No idea.
I'm going to rewatch both of them now.
Yeah. So
with that in mind.
Yeah. So that's the character. My Blue Heaven is Henry Hill.
My second favorite Steve Martin movie.
It's phenomenal. It's so underrated. I love that
Before
movie
we get
so much.
into all of this very interesting stuff, I'd like to get a little bit more background from beginning to end, or present.
Oh.
Of you. Like, where did you say you grew up at?
So I grew up in Montgomery County, and then and it was before, it was like in the 70s and 80s. And two of my sisters, my mom still lived there.
What were you into when you were in high school?
Dude, it was like music and what everyone into high school is just like in the 80s. I was just like right out of a John Hughes movie. It was like the arcades and music.
What was your favorite game?
I like Spy Hunter.
Oh my God, I fucking love Spy Hunter.
Yeah, Spy Hunter's great.
That's like my go-to. That's my fucking go-to. I love that fucking game.
Mine was
I can still do
Defender.
it. Well, I have one of those. So we have a game room in our basement. I'm a couple blocks from Heath down here, and we have a game room. And I have a pool table, like a bar box pool table that they found in St. Louis because I love pool. And my kids have all taken over. My house is filled with teenagers, which is why you drive by my house and there's like 80 cars there at any given time. And but in the
That's
basement,
good.
yeah, I guess. And in the basement is, but I have one of those bar, video games with all the classic games from the 80s.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I did in the 80s, and then I went to Western Pennsylvania for college, and I never really came back to the area because I moved to Johnstown, Pennsylvania after college, which was a shithole. But I'm 22, 23. You don't really care.
Johnstown, but that's where they filmed Slapshot.
Slapshot,
Yeah.
and all the
I
right
love
moves.
that movie.
Slapshot and All Right Moves, and whenever something bad happened in Johnstown, and by the way, I lived there in '92, and it was 42,000 people. It's now 17,000.
Wow.
And whenever something bad, the very religious area, and whenever something bad happened, someone wrote a letter to the editor saying, "This is God punishing us for Slapshot." That was a big thing.
They really have the statue of the dog in the middle of the town, right?
Yeah. It was before the movie.
Yeah.
But
I didn't realize that was where they made All the Right Moves, too.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Is it really?
It was. At the time. I haven't watched it in
Johnstown is rough. It's I'm on the board of my university, so I was up there last summer because I hadn't been there for a while. And I'm like, oh man, people are just openly smoking weed in the street. And I'm like, oh wait, that's not weed. It was just meth. It was just
Man.
So then I worked I worked for a cable company there, and my job, because I'm trained as a journalist, but jobs were kind of tough in '92. So I took a bunch of classes that was this, and for anyone who's not on YouTube, it's all the electronic stuff, except it was like all 80s stuff. And my job was running a community access station like Wayne's World.
Wow.
And I would teach people how to use the equipment so they could do their shows. And it was all like religious shows and stuff like that. And then I met my now wife, and we moved out to New Mexico, Albuquerque. And we were there for 5 years, and I worked in TV news. So I worked for...
How did you like Albuquerque?
Loved it. Matter of fact, we're looking for a place out there as a second,
I got a good friend of mine that moved there recently.
It's
and
gritty.
He's been trying to get me to come out there to watch the
Balloon Fiesta?
The Balloon Fiesta. So maybe we should hook up and go out and see it.
We're looking for a house right by there so we can Airbnb it out, because we just paid off our house, so we wanted something else. So I always say Albuquerque and Santa Fe are like Baltimore and Annapolis. Albuquerque is gritty like Baltimore, but fun but gritty. And then about an hour away is Annapolis and Santa Fe, which is kind of artsy fartsy and all kind of hoity-toity and all that. So we were there for 5 years and we loved it. And we want to start a family, so we thought, well, let's come back to the East Coast, which was, in retrospect, was kind of a mistake. Even though I love where we are, and this is absolutely killer. But we're actually looking for a place back there. But so, I skipped the best part.
So you guys started off in New Mexico?
Yeah, pretty much. We were dating for 3 months, and then we picked up and moved to New Mexico because she got a job offer there. But I skipped the best part. So in high school, let's go back in the Wayback Machine. So this is in the late 80s, and it's 1988, and I graduate in June, around now, May, I guess. And DC at the time, Bethesda were 3 miles off the DC line. And we graduate, and a few days later, some of my friends go, let's go to a comedy club in DC. And it was Garvin's Comedy Club, which is at 14th and K. And it was a war zone at the time. It was, that's when there's 600 murders a year in DC. It was awful. And so, and 14th Street was just all hookers and drug dealers and everything. So we're, 4 white kids from the suburbs, and, we zip in. And I loved comedy. I watched A&E's Evening at the Improv all the time. I loved stand-up comedy. There's no Comedy Central or anything at the time. So we go there, and it was like open mic night. No, it wasn't. It was like local professional night or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was like Tony Woods, who he's still out there banging it, and then a couple other guys. And I just fell in love. I'm like, this is the shit. This is it. And so my friends all lived in Rockville and stuff like that. So I came back the next day. I went through all the hookers and stuff. And, and I it was a $5 cover, which at the time, and I was 18. And I just started writing jokes and stuff because I was just, and I was stealing jokes from I was on A&E in the Improv and trying to make them my own and stuff. And then At the time, it was Patton Oswalt, who's you've seen Patton Oswalt. He's out there because he was from Springfield. Was he Springfield, Virginia, or McLean? He's from McLean, Virginia. And then Dave Chappelle, because he lived in Silver Spring. And then his best friend was Dave Edwards, who's still a comic, but he's like a local comic out in LA and stuff. And Blaine Capatch, who was a comic who should have been much bigger than he was. And Tony Woods, who's still great and everything. So I got to know them, and they kept bugging me to go up and everything. So I went out on the first open mic night, which was like 2 months later, and killed. And I'm like, I'm the best that ever was. This is awesome. And you got that adrenaline, just people digging you. Because I was, like that non-playable character in high school, never getting laid, never, my voice didn't change till I was like in my 40s. So I do comedy, and I just absolutely knocked it out of the park. And Dave comes up, and he was 2 years younger than I was. And he's like this skinny kind of little guy. He's like, oh, man, that was great, man. Even with the jokes you stole. And I was like, all right. And so I went up the next night ready to kill it again, and I ate shit. Oh. Not a chuckle, not a... And what I found out, too, those, like, some audiences were white and some were black. You would much rather bomb in front of a white audience than a black audience, because a black audience can have fun with you or without you. And they'll laugh at the fact that, So I did comedy for a few years, and then...
Not laughing with you, laughing at you.
Oh, yeah. It was awful. You had sweat going down your back. And you hear people coughing. It was great.
Did you try to do like the same exact set?
Yeah.
You replicate it, and it just didn't.
Yeah, because that's
land.
what you're doing. I mean, in comedy, you're doing the same thing all the time. You're just. I mean, I never got this role, but you want to do an hour, and it takes you about a year and a half to do an hour, and so you're doing the same thing every night, and you're knocking off the rough edges, and you're changing things, and if I look back, I found my old notebooks. It's just awful. It's just you cringe, going, I can't believe I thought that was funny, but. But then, I remember Dave and I were outside. We were smoking weed outside between shows one night.
Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. And he just goes, we were good friends. We were tight back then. And he goes, man, you're funnier than most of the motherfuckers in there. And he goes, you're never going to make it. I'm like, yeah, thanks, friend. He goes, you're not going to do what it takes. You got to sleep in your car. You got to do it. And he goes, you're going to take the safe route. And I'm like, fuck you, which I did. I totally took the safe route, which was like, you get like a straight job. You're like, I'll do this on the side. And then, and you just have to throw yourself into it. And I was just too scared to. So I did comedy like on and off for like years. I still do it. Like,
so he was trying to challenge you.
Yeah, I think so.
To get you to go that direction.
Yeah, because he was living in his... he was 16 and he was living at home in Silver Spring. But like when he turned 18, 19, he was like auditioning for SNL and Living Color, and he was out there banging it. And he was, even back then, you're like, yeah, this guy's something special, because he was. And he was funny as shit. But so I just... Then I was working in New Mexico, and there's a comedy club down there, but I was in TV news, so I was working nights. Yeah. So, by the time I got there, everything was closed, so then you just get out of it. But I still do it now, but I just do it like on the side. I MC a lot of stuff in time. It's fun to do. I do a lot of comedy writing. But anyway, so fast forward, we're back in the Wayback Machine. So we're living in Albuquerque, and I'm working TV news, which I loved. I loved the adrenaline. I loved all that stuff. It was exciting. It's not the same now because it's all automated and everything.
Was it anything like the show Newsroom?
Yeah, it was like news. Did you ever see the movie? It was one of the best romantic comedies ever done, which was Broadcast News. It was Holly Hunter.
I remember that one.
Yeah, it was like that. It was
that one guy who flips out and take it anymore.
Yeah, that was what was that name of that? That's a great one. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. It's Faye Dunaway.
Yeah.
Shit, I can't remember, but it was exciting. So then, but I worked weekends and holiday, like every single holiday.
Yeah.
And then all that
That's
stuff.
hard on a family, yeah.
And we didn't have a family yet. We wanted to start one. So we came back here, moved down the street. We thought we'd be moving on in a couple of years, but then I got into marketing and I did that. And so I did that for years. And then, got into some political stuff. I still, dabble with all that, but
getting comfortable is
dangerous.
Yeah. It's probably the most dangerous thing people can do.
My grandfather always said you should be a little afraid.
And I think that's one of the things that things like social media and people who aren't just going after the dopamine are starting to realize that they're living in some sort of a gilded cage.
Well,
I think it's both amplifying the negative and it's waking people up.
I had a guy who was I used to be on Facebook a lot where I do like these posts that were really hilarious and funny and all that stuff.
I remember.
Yeah, and I
It
stopped.
wasn't that long ago.
And I stopped a few years ago because I had a friend of mine who used to work for me, and he was a graphic designer. And he hated two things. He hated the advertising business in general, and he hated social media. And he said, because it takes talented people and it shoehorns them into mediocrity. He goes, I can't tell you how many great artists I've seen who work in advertising where they're doing logos and they're doing, shit like that. And he hadn't worked for me for like 15 years or 20 years. And he came back to me. He goes, dude, you're funny as shit. He goes, but how much comedy writing are you doing? How much comedy are you doing? How much? He goes, yeah, it's a circle jerk. All the neighborhood women think you're funny. All the middle-aged housefraus think you're funny and everything. He goes,
Well, you are funny.
Yeah, but his point was, it wasn't just me. It was like other like artists and people like that.
You're meant for bigger things.
He goes, you're wasting your energy because we know energy's finite. You learn that when you get middle age.
I thought you didn't believe in energy.
Well, no, I mean creative energy. But it's finite, and you're wasting it.
I agree with you.
Wasting it on funny Facebook posts?
Yeah. What's the point of that? That's junk food,
It gets forgotten pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean the same way. I mean that's just me. I mean, what about artists or what? His thing was like even advertising. Like,
well, it's nice to have that space where you can flex that muscle.
Yeah, but you're not. You tell yourself that you are, but you're not. You're proud of yourself. You're looking at all the likes. You're getting your little dopamine rush from that. Aren't I funny? But it's what's that worth in the end? What are you contributing? Everyone forgets about it. What's that worth in the end?
Well, I don't know. Everybody needs the pizza delivery guy as well as the guy that created nuclear energy. They seem like they're vastly different importance in society, but they're both very important.
Well, I know people, and you guys know people who are wildly talented who've got straight jobs because they're afraid to take a chance. They're afraid to. Well, how many people?
I was told, be careful how much you shoot for because there's disappointment on the other end of that. And that's, that's a generational thing. And I think that's what was happening when we were growing up, is that generation just before us. Have you ever read The Fourth Turning?
No.
It talks about 4 generations over 10 to 20 years, and it turns from, these years where things are hard, and then they get easier, and people get weaker because it's too easy to get comfortable.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's truth to it. I mean,
and then there's people, it doesn't matter how easy it is to be comfortable, they want to go out and do the hard thing.
Well, it's what Dave Chappelle was telling you. Like, you got to be all in. Like, if you want to,
I think he was actually trying
dangerous.
to be a good, I think he was actually trying to be a good friend.
Yeah, and well, there's how many, I always think about this. How many Tony Award winning playwrights are waiting tables? Or Grammy Award winning musicians are, accountants because they took, their father was in the ear or whatever it was. And they're like, you got to provide, you got to pay the rent, and their parents aren't wrong. They're not wrong. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of mediocre people and a lot of famous mediocre people who make great livings at what they do. And why? Is because they realize that it's not the talent. The talent's almost secondary. It's the know-how, and it's the stick-to-itiveness, and it's just taking risks and all that. Yeah, it's the grit.
It's the willingness to not be liked.
I've known so many people who, and I've known so many people who've lapped talented people, and the talented people are bitter about it. And I'm like, look, you've got the talent, but you're coasting on talent, which is weird to say. But they know that they don't have as much talent, so they've got to be pounding down doors. They got to be opening up, their own avenues. They got to be clearing their own way, and they're doing it. And they're not as talented as you are, but they're smarter than you are.
Yeah, I think Michael Jordan might be a really good example of that because he couldn't make the high school team to save himself, but he wanted it. He wanted it more than all of those guys that were more talented in high school.
Yeah, but how many?
And so he just developed himself and developed himself and developed himself.
Yeah, and it's just, but I think you need people to take where you gotta take the. I'll say this about my wife. I mean, we have the same problems that we have, that all married couples do, and this is where I think having a partner is so important, who supports you. Because again, we have our problems, we've had our ups and downs over the years, but I will say that every good thing I've had in my life, from having kids to buying a house to even the careers, because she's like, you ought to apply to that job. I'm like, she goes, just apply to the job. I've had that person who's going, pushing, right?
Yeah, yep.
And I think, if you're listening to this, you got to think, do you have that person in your life? And I did. And like I said, we've had our issues, but she's always had my back and I've always had hers. But she's pushed me into everything, every little thing I have, to my, is because at one point she's like, you ought to do this, or you ought to do that, or why aren't you doing that? I think you have to have that person in your life who projects that. Now, I think in Zach's case, and your dad sounds like the kind of guy that pushed you, like, take the chance, do what you want.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many people have parents like that?
You'd love his story about, I forget his name right now, the Joker.
Cesar Romero.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, I ended up becoming friends with him when I was a little kid.
Here.
And we called him up, and my dad contacted him, wrote him a letter, and was like, hey, if we're ever in LA, could we stop by and visit you? And he was like, yeah, come on by.
So you met Cesar Romero?
We went to his house. I mean, I
pen
exchanged
pals
Christmas
with him.
cards with him.
That's so
he was
awesome.
a great dude.
I want a friend. I want like a celebrity friend, but not like a top tier celebrity. Like someone like...
It's too late. You already have Dave Chappelle.
No, we haven't talked in 30 years.
Something tells me he'd remember you.
I don't know.
You're pretty memorable.
We had our podcast. I was trying to get John Waters on.
Oh, cool.
And
That would be cool.
And I kept bugging his agent and everything like that. And once she goes, it's still a no, but you're making progress because he knows you're annoying. He knows you and thinks you're annoying, but he knows who you are. I'm like, all right, making progress.
That's not nothing.
Fuck it, I'll just do it. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think I need like a mid-level famous friend, like Dudley from Different Strokes. Just someone that's wasn't a star, but someone that just
Well, that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying we're trying to have these so that people can recognize that the people that they live around are a lot more interesting than those just little, hey, how you been doing? How the kids doing?
I don't care.
Right?
I don't care how your kid's doing.
Have a 3-hour conversation where we talk about people and we talk about what really has affected them, because, yoga has really changed my life. The people that I've met in it, and it isn't yoga. It's the people. It's the energy that I got from getting to know these people. And we had this moment in time where we're all trapped in this, and everybody just showed up on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon.
Well, it's community
For like a year. And we were just, it was unstoppable.
But it's community. And this is why, I am, not only am I not really, I mean, I grew up Irish Catholic. So, by the time I got my 20s, I'm like, fuck this. Like, not only did I fall out of religion, I fell out of I wrote a blog post years ago, the day I stopped believing in the Loch Ness Monster and God. And it was just where it just was like, it was like an anti-born again moment where I was in my pantry, I was getting a can of Muir Glen tomatoes. And in that moment, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Like, there's no God. There's none of this. It wasn't like it happened over months of just, of where like little bits doubts and I'm struggling with myself and having the dark, night of the soul. It was just all of a sudden like, nope. And I've never wavered from that. Now I respect people who do have faith. I'm not an asshole. Well, I mean, I am, but not that kind. But that said, growing up, we weren't religious. My family, because we're Irish Catholic, you just go to church on Sundays, hungover, and that's it. We weren't like the.
We were Keisters, Christmas and Easters.
No, we went every Sunday, and I was an altar boy. Nothing happened, but it was, but we had we were Bethesda, so we were an Irish Catholic neighborhood in the Sea of Judaism, and for us, the church and the school was our community, and it was, and still, my mom, she's a principal there, and but it was, looking back, going, that was our community, and there's something very important to that, so even
community is hugely important.
For churches, again, I am quietly anti-religion. But I've seen a lot of good that comes out of the churches, the community, not the big ones, not the fundamentalist and evangelical and all that. And, because I don't see much good coming out of that. But I mean, like the black churches here in town, or even, Catholic, these little churches, is that it's important to people. And, in light of not having that, you found what it was for you, you and Zach, which is community. It's people who are united, not united, but are drawn together over a commonality. And then it just, blooms from there, and I think,
Like-minded people that also wanted to get healthy.
Yeah.
Like-minded, 100%.
And that's what church is, like-minded people who want to, worship together, that they submit to a higher power or whatever it is. I mean, that's why I think AA, you have to submit to a higher power. I mean, I think that's part of it. It's, it's just, there's something bigger than you. For you guys, yoga is bigger than you.
So did you find this in mushrooms?
Well, I will say this though.
Segue.
Yeah, that was smooth.
I don't know if it was smooth, but it was a segue.
Yeah, I'm not religious at all, and I'm not spiritual at all. Like people say, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I'm not spiritual either. But when I do mushrooms, which I try, it's been a year now, and I resolved to do it every 3 months. I just have not been good at that.
Why do you think that is?
Just time. You have kids, and your house is filled, and
So your life is full.
No, it's just like my house is filled with like I have like 8 or 9 teenagers in my house at any given time, and trying to trip around that's like trying to jerk off when everyone's home. You gotta get in the mindset.
It ain't happening. Yeah.
No. I mean, I could do it, but I'm a professional. But it was, but when I do trip, it's, I have felt like a presence or something. And I've had friends going, "You mean like God?" I'm like, no, just something like that's there. That's kind of nebulous. They're like God. And I'm like, so I don't have the argument against that yet. But I would think, is that something
I don't think it
internal or
needs to be
external?
an argument. You call the presence whatever you want to call it.
So it was, do you do mushrooms, Zach?
Yeah.
All right. Often?
Yeah. I microdose often.
Like what?
A half a gram.
By the way, we don't really do this. We're just saying this for the effect. We're just We're just saying this is all satire. I just want to clear that up right now, officer.
Yeah, I mean, I've done heavier doses throughout my life, but
Like what's heavy?
I mean, a few stems, a few caps.
You got to get a scale, Zach.
Yeah,
You gotta
I
know what you're
never
taking.
really.
Everyone, if you're doing this, you got to get a scale. You got to know what you're taking.
How do you? I mean, how do you do it? What do you?
So you get your scale, and you can't get like your regular kitchen scale. You got to get one of the ones that does the smaller doses. And I metabolize stuff quickly, so I need a higher dose.
Okay.
So I do like 4 grams. That's about that, and that's a lot for a lot of people. For most people, it'd be between 2.5 and 3.5. And then the heroic dose, of course, as everyone knows, is about 5 grams. But my kids call it microdosing. They're like, "Oh, we're taking like 1.5 grams." I'm like, "Dude, that's not microdosing. That's a small dose. A microdose, you shouldn't feel any effects,
Yes.
any tangible effects right off the bat." So is that where you are?
Yeah, sometimes I take a half a gram and I feel it a little more than other times, but I mean,
That's too much.
yeah. So,
Or for a microdose,
but yeah. So most of the time, though, I take it. I don't feel noticeably any different.
it's like a museum dose.
I feel like kind of like an energy burst. I mean, it feels like drinking a Red Bull to me, really. But sometimes the capsule that I'm taking is a little bit stronger, and I'm like, well, maybe that had a little bit more.
That's why
in it.
you gotta measure so you know what you're
So
doing.
is 4 grams of mushrooms? Is every 4 grams created equal, or some stronger than others? Or?
So as people know, the mushrooms are the cubensis. That's what the species name is, cubensis, and there's different strains of that. So golden teacher is your, if you're listening to this and you're in your 60s and you got mushroom in the 70s, you got golden teacher. That is your standard. That's your pad thai of Thai food. A golden teacher is your generic mushroom. It's very good. Well, they started getting kind of crazy with the varieties. So there's one called penis envy, which is an albino, and that became the mushroom that everything else derived from. And it's so
Don't ask me.
so basically
Everything's a derivative.
everything's a derivative of that, and they're crossbred, and because they're not a plant, gotta emphasize that. People say, what cultivar is that? I'm like, no, it's a species, because or a variety rather. And so like the hot one, Jedi Mindfuck, the names are fun, but that's one. You have B+, you have what's the hot one right now is Jack Frost. That's a hot one. But there's all these different varieties. And the argument on Reddit is that cubensis, people call them cubes. They're saying a cube is a cube is a cube. Basically, it doesn't matter the variety you take, they're all the same, because it's all psilocybin, which is the active ingredient. I respectfully disagree, just because there are some that are, for example, B+, They're like the little mushrooms that you take, and those people are generally not a fan because the commonality, which is really interesting to me, is they said I saw a lot of eyes watch, and more people have said that to me, which is, I mean, you could delve into the psychology of that, which I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but
no, I think the molecular structure of things being slightly different definitely matters.
Yeah, and they're still trying to figure all that out. Like, what is, I mean, psilocybin, obviously, but does the variety make a difference? But so to answer your question, Zach, is is there a difference? Yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah.
So if you took like Jedi Mindfuck or you took Jack Frost, it's going to be much more intense. Some of them, and there's one variety, I can't remember what it is, and it's where you take, because your trip lasts anywhere between 2.5 and 4 hours. I've had trips that have gone 5, but there's some, and if you do it with cannabis, I'm not a regular cannabis smoker, but is that will launch you, right away. And if you start, when it starts to ebb down, and I'm doing the downward thing with my hand here, if you smoke again, boom, it takes you back up.
Right,
So you can roller coaster that, depending on what you're looking for. And so there's one right now where it's for a couple of hours, like, oh, this is nice. And all of a sudden, boom, it takes you to the attic, for whatever reason. So these are all things. And, it's, I've not.
And I think it's personal too, because everybody digests.
And your metabolism is different.
Everybody digests things differently too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just, why, and it depends on how you take it. Do you take it with lemon?
How big a guy you are.
Actually, that doesn't have as much to do with it as you would think.
Yeah.
Because I'm double my wife's size, and literally double. And, I'm a tall, gangly guy, but I'm 200 pounds, but, she's not even 100 pounds, and it takes slightly more for her to take off. That's, what it is. But it also, it's all set and setting. It all depends on what you're looking for. You can go to a concert and have a good time with it, or if you're looking to, find. For me, I came to it just because just severe depression. I was not into psychedelics ever. I was into drinking and weed, and I was into comedy, so it was a little coke here and there. But I mean, I couldn't afford it, thank God. But I was never interested in psychedelics because I was a control freak. And I just thought that I'd be. I didn't want to lose control of what I was doing, and then
because what it was advertised as when we were growing up was like people just flip out and then they have flashbacks and
the flashbacks,
all this.
What was that? You do if you do LSD twice in your life, you're going to go insane. That's what they.
The kid who smoked angel dust and jumped out a window because he thought he could fly. That was always the story I heard.
It was very effective propaganda.
Well, and and I wish there weren't.
There are things that do that to people, but I don't think these little mushrooms do that to people.
Yeah, well, they're the horror stories because of the drug wars in the 70s and 80s and all the propaganda. I don't like that word, but it was just like, my parents, like, they had no problem with me drinking, which I wish they had, but
it's one of the worst things that people can do.
But if my mom she heard a rumor, which was true, that I'd smoked weed, which I was a lot, but and she flipped out because for her that was, it was like the same as crack, because she never did that growing up or anything. And I wasn't going to stop doing weed, but I mean, remember in college, people would get their hands on mushrooms, like, nope, I wasn't interested. And then, I think I came to you and I have known each other for about 10, 15 years, but I have not, but when I was in my full on depression, which no one knew about, I got funnier when I was depressed. I had a couple friends in my life, they'd read my Facebook post and everyone was like, I'd get 200 likes on something. And I had a couple friends text me going, dude, are you okay? And it was,
so why do you think that is? Why did you get funnier when you were depressed?
Don't know. And it was, so I started, it was, my job, I was a marketing director at a local business, and I was under a shit ton of pressure. It's just, everyone's under their own pressure. And I had, my wife was going through her thing at the time, and, I had 2 small kids, and I thought that I had seasonal depression, because it was in the winter, and I was drinking to mask it. I was never, I said, alcoholics is a strong word, but I mean, because if you go to AA meetings, they'll say, there's no difference between someone who drinks 1 a night or someone who drinks 30 a night. It just depends if you need it. I'm like, I disagree. But I was not drinking for the right reasons. And I was drinking every night. I just wasn't getting fucked up. But I was a gray drinker. That's someone it didn't affect my life, didn't affect my work. I wasn't hungover. I was rarely drunk. So it was never going to be a problem. I could do that forever. And it was in a tight box. And I had rules about drinking. I never drank and drove, never did any of that stuff.
What did you drink?
Just light beer. I was total white trash. And the reason why was because if I drank liquor or whatever, then, I was going to get fucked up every night. So I was just Miller Lite. And because if I went to AA, they would have just laughed at me, because, I would have had to make stuff up at some point because, these guys are losing houses and their families and everything. And I'd go, well, I drink, 9 Miller Lights every night, but I was, and I had the reverse problem is that, I was talking to friends like before I had kids, I came out, for a few years after that, because I worked in TV news and everyone drank. And I talked to my friends. I'm like, dude, I think I have a drinking problem. And they're like, no, you're fine. Like everyone surrounded me. It was like the reverse of an intervention. They're all like, no, dude, you have to keep drinking. I'm like, all right, you sure? You should be. So,
drinking is funny like that.
Yeah. And,
because it's a social group.
Yeah. And especially it's stereotypical, but especially if you grew up Irish Catholic, it's just, it's so.
Well, it's ingrained into our culture.
It's everywhere. When you stop drinking and it just dawns on you, it's just, right now I've got the athletic beers, which I don't drink that often. And then I have a Guinness Zero because I really do love them. And, but I used to miss it. It's been 5 years and I don't miss it. I finally stopped, but because I quit smoking, it took me 10 years before I missed. Do
you still do nicotine at all?
No. Is that what you're doing there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do it. Because I'd be back.
I just started, but it's not. There's no tobacco involved.
I know, but it's just I didn't like. I quit smoking because I'd be going nuts on a plane, and I was tired of being a slave to it, and it was just.
See, I don't have that reaction to it. It's like
I was a pack a day of Marlboro Reds, pack and a half. And
Did you ever smoke?
No.
Smoking was the best.
Nah, I smoked.
It was the best.
I tried chew.
I loved it.
And it was just like it would just like shut me down. I didn't feel good. Nicotine for me is more along the lines of like I don't know. It's just a mood stabilizer.
Well, the studies are interesting on it. The studies are really interesting about mental clarity. I've been reading because I'm a big studies guy. I read the studies.
It's in our food too. It's in like eggplant.
Yeah, because they're all and tomato,
and potatoes.
They're because they're all nightshade family.
Right.
So they're matter of fact, as a gardener,
right. And I didn't know it was in our food on a regular basis.
Yeah, but
which makes sense.
It's on low doses, but
it's just in tobacco more than other foods.
But addiction, I've quit everything you can quit, and they've all been difficult. Quitting smoking was awful, and it took me 10 years before I stopped. Quitting drinking that happened. So again, what
did you get from it? Why? What was so positive about it?
It wasn't. There was nothing positive, and I think there's very few positive things in it. And I don't want to call it addiction, but it probably was close to it. And it was it was because sleep had always evaded me for years. My mind goes a zillion miles an hour, and I could go for days at a time on 4 hours of sleep, and it wasn't, I felt like shit, don't get me wrong, but I could do it. And I couldn't sleep without it. And the thought of the very few times where I would go without drinking, again, I was in control. I was never drunk and everything, but it would help me get to sleep. And then the trap is that your sleep sucks, and you'd wake up the next day, and then
and you had less REM sleep, right, and all that.
So
stuff.
So anyway, I thought it was seasonal depression, and my boss took his life, and things got kind of dark after that, where I was it didn't dawn on me I was depressed. I just felt like I was just almost frantic, where I was just things were but like the muddy thinking, and it was just I just felt on edge all the time, and I was depressed, but I'm highly functional. So I wasn't like that guy who's lying in bed and couldn't get out. I mean, I was like on 5 different boards of directors. I was teaching at university. I drive 4 hours up, teach a 3-hour class, drive 4 hours back, and that's without snow. If it snowed, it was more than that. I did that, I did it as a favor to one of my mentors in college, and so I had a lot of plates spinning. And and at the time my marriage wasn't going great, and I knew it was depression. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, holy shit, I'm depressed.
Sounds like you were making up for not doing the thing that you really wanted to do.
I don't know.
With keeping busy
I-
and using anything to keep you from
maybe, but I mean, that's a
just
route.
managing.
Or it could have been chemical. I mean, that's what, or, this is, like I said, we're not built for all this. And I think, because I found a therapist, and she was very nice, but it didn't go anywhere. So I was working out, I was trying to eat better, I was trying to do all these things, and I was trying all these medications, but the medications suck because they all have sexual side effects. And, but at the time, my wife and I weren't doing great, so it didn't matter if there were sexual side effects or not. And it was, and then I started and I've talked about this. I did a talk on this. I think I sent you the video.
We watched it. Yeah.
Yeah,
The Ignite Annapolis.
Yeah, it's like a TED talk for people. It's like 5 minutes, and they called me up in 2022, and I talk about it because they're just like, "Can you do something funny?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I'm like, "Fuck you! I'm not your dancing monkey. I'm gonna do what saved my life." Because no one knew. No one knew I was depressed, by the way, because I was just, I was highly functional, but I was dying inside for 10 years. It was awful, and it was just so dark all the time. And then, so I got this job. I got this job offer, and I took it. And then my daughter started going off the rails with her own issues, and my wife and I weren't doing well. And it was so bad. And then just all of a sudden, I started getting these suicidal thoughts started popping in my head. And they're surprising at first, but it was like having someone inside you that was just trying to kill you all the time. Like there wasn't a moment for about 8 years maybe where I didn't have a suicidal thought. And it was
That's a long time.
But it was constant. The rare times we were having sex, during sex I was having suicidal thoughts. If we were on vacation in Ireland, I was having suicidal thoughts. If we were on vacation in the Caribbean with my family, everyone was having a great time, I was having suicidal thoughts. And then in 2018, my wife and I, she works in sales, and she's very good at it. And they send us to all these places, because she makes President Club and all that stuff, and they do it right. They flew us out to Terrania, my wife and myself.
Where's that?
It's in L.A. It's in something Verde. It's the cliffs in L.A. So it's it's like you go through. It's like on the ocean, and it's stunning. It's like these big cliffs, and it's like this super high end.
Sounds gorgeous.
Very elite. Look it up. It's called Terrania, and it's this elite resort. It was spectacular. I mean, and they gave us each $1,000 spending money while we were there.
Damn.
And we were having lobster, and we were having. I was drinking at the time. We had this top shelf tequila, and they have all these saltwater pools with these paths with these cliffs with these glass fences so they didn't block, and you'd see these whales as far as from where your pier is right here. And you'd see these whales out there, and you'd go up on the cliffs, and the waves were crashing. And then so one night, they have this big stage set up, and I can't remember her name. I'm trying to remember. She was a Grammy award-winning artist, and there was 50 of us, and she's on this big stage, and there's 50 of us, which is like having this in your backyard, personal... right? And she sings a song called "Rise Up," which is kind of important because she's singing that song, and it's about fortitude and stuff. And I'm holding a $80 glass of tequila, and life doesn't get it better than this. It just doesn't. And there's this voice in my head saying, "Hey, you ought to go up to the cliffs to go look at the water." And I'm thinking in my voice going, "What's up with the cliffs?" They're like, "No, you should just go up there." And I'm like, "I know why you want me to go up there." And they're like, "Just go up to the cliffs." Life doesn't get any better than what I'm experiencing. And I had this voice in myself that wanted me to kill myself by flinging stuff off. So at that point, I'm just like, I knew shit was serious, and that was in 2018. So I got back, and, I was on all sorts of different things, all sort of different medications. Nothing was working. I took a genetic test last fall, and it turns out I am resistant to all. I think a lot of people are. I'm resistant to most kind of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, antipsychotics. So the stuff I was taking wasn't working. Yet I got the side effects, which was great.
All the downside and then the upside.
My daughter's going off the rails. My marriage sucks. It's things are just awful. And so my brother calls me. He lives in New York. He's an actor. And he's like, "Dude," I didn't tell anybody this. I didn't have anybody. And I'm just, and I tried to tell my wife, but that just didn't go well.
Why didn't you tell anybody?
Because you're ashamed of it. And it's just a scary prospect. You don't know how to tell somebody. I told my wife, and she's not a very strong, I love her, but she's just very, very not strong, like emotionally. And I finally went to her and I said, I'm having voices in my head telling me to kill myself and I'm really scared. And she said, I don't know what to do with that. And it's not her fault. She just doesn't know.
That is a response.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, all right. I felt better. I'm like, all right, now I know I'm on my own with this. And I wasn't sure what to do. And then, so one night, it was in October, and it was in 2019. It was before the pandemic. And so my sons, I have a daughter and a son, and they're both 12 and 13 at the time, around there. And it was late at night in October, and there was a storm going on. And I'm sitting at my table, and I got a beer in front of me, and it's like 1 a.m. And I thought, tonight's it. This is it. And I thought about it a lot, and I thought, this is it. And I have a small boat, and it's right at the pier. You can almost see it. It's just a couple blocks down, or a couple houses down. And I had my boat, and bear in mind, you're not thinking rationally at this point. And I thought, tonight's it. I'm going to go down, and I'm going to take the boat out. And then I'm just going to take it out into the storm, and then I'm going to fall out of the boat and let the boat go so I can't change my mind. And that's what I was going to do. So I went and I got the keys to the boat, and I'm sitting down. I'm going to finish this beer, and that's it. And I felt almost relieved. I wasn't crying. I'm like, this is it. And so I finished my beer, and it was like a movie. The house was dark, and there's thunder and lightning out, and I was just sitting in the pool of light that's over my kitchen table, and I'm just scratching one of the cats on the head like that, and so I'm like, okay. So I put on my shoes, and I get up, and I hear this noise. It's my son stumbling down the stairs, half asleep. I said, hey, buddy, what are you up to? And he goes, oh, I'm thirsty. And he goes and he gets a seltzer water out of and he turns around, and he gives me this big bear hug. And then he goes, all right, like, Dad, I love you. And I'm like, all right, I love you too, buddy. He went upstairs, and I'm like, well, fuck. So I put the keys back, and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm just, because you're so self-centered. Depression's awful because you're so self-involved. Yep. And you're so self-obsessed, and I didn't think for a moment about my son. And at that moment, I thought about my son sitting at the funeral. So I put the keys back.
What it would do to him?
Yeah. And I went up to bed, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I don't get because at the time I thought, all I got to do is get my wife through whatever crisis she was having, and my daughter through whatever crisis she was having. And as a reward, I'd get to kill myself. That was my reward, because then they'd be okay. And my son just, I love you, Dad, fucker, that fucker. And so that was 2019. And then 2020 came around, and it was pandemic hit. We'd gotten back. We were in the Caribbean. We came back, and then and on May the 4th, 2020, I had a friend of mine. He was on one of those calls I told you about with my high school, and he was big into AA, and we hadn't talked for a while, and I made a joke about drinking and stuff, and he texted me after. He goes, dude, that's kind of a call for help. I'm like, no, it's not. You're reading into it, and maybe there was a cry for help. And he goes, when was the last time you didn't drink? And I'm like, it's been a while. And I told him, I'm in control. He goes, I believe you are, but you're a different. So I quit drinking, and the first night was kind of tough. And the next day, he goes, was that tough? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, that makes you think. If it's tough, maybe. I'm like, yeah. I said, I'm going to take a week off. So I took a week off, and it sucked. It was hard. And I'm like, if it's this hard.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Why was it hard?
Because it was such a habit. The feeling of panic of not, there's no withdrawal. There's none of that. But the thought of not having that drink and that ritual, not having that drink sitting by myself because I only did it. I did it between 9:30 at night and 1:30 in the morning. That was my box. I didn't go beyond that. I didn't day drink. I never did. I didn't. But it was just the panic of it was with me all that time. And it was just the thought of not drinking. I had not driven at night for years because I'm responsible. So that's what I did when I quit drinking is I would drive at night because it was so crazy that I was driving at night. I know that sounds stupid for people who are in control.
It doesn't sound
That
stupid
sounds
to me.
crazy. I'm like, I'm
Like you're being with yourself finally.
I'm going to drive to Giant at 10 or 11 p.m. And I was there. I'm like, this is crazy that I'm driving, because I never drunk and drove. Never did that. But it didn't help. The depression didn't go away. And I thought it would. I thought, well, this is a bad. So that's when my brother said, dude, I finally reached out to him and I said, he's my best friend and he's about 6 years younger than I am. And he lives this wild life in New York. He doesn't drink. He just doesn't like it. And he's an actor. He's an award-winning playwright up in New York. And he dates models and actresses that you guys have seen in his 20s. And he goes, I'm doing all the talking. I feel horrible.
That's why you're here.
Oh,
To
yeah.
do all the talking.
Yeah.
I want one of you to raise your hands as soon as you're bored, just to let me know.
We're not bored.
So he goes,
At least I'm not.
I call him, Zach's nodding off. So I called my brother and I said, dude, I got to talk to you. And I just said, I cannot think of anything other than suicide. And it's been this way for about 8 years. And it's all I can do to stop from killing myself. And he goes, can I call you back in 5 minutes? He goes, I just need to process this. And he's starting to get choked up. So he got off the phone and 5 minutes, like on the dot, he called back. He goes, okay. He goes, I have a counselor because he and his 25-year-old girlfriend had just broken up. And he goes, I have a counselor. And he goes, and mushrooms and stuff. We went to the mushrooms. He goes, start reading the studies. And he goes, I think, you've tried everything. He goes, you really have to think about the mushrooms. So you and I were talking about this on the street the other days. I am not an anecdotal person because like you said, what works for one person doesn't work for other people,
No.
based on so many things. So I dove in for about a couple months. I dove into the studies. And when I said read the studies, I read the abstract or I'd feed the stuff into, ChatGPT was young at the time, but I would, and the studies were blowing my mind. I read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
I read that because of you.
Yeah. So
you recommended it to me and I read
and
it.
I read
it like right away.
Yeah. And I liked it because it wasn't that bullshit woo sort of stuff. It was a guy who's saying, hey, look, be careful. This isn't a panacea. I like the fact that he wasn't rushing into it like it was going to save everybody. And, and also because you and I know now, you got to do the work. There's no magic pills. There's no magic solutions. That whatever is going to break break through the bullshit, you still have work to do. So I did the mushrooms and
I think that's a huge understatement personally.
Yeah. And
I mean,
people want the easy way. They want the Ozempic without doing the work.
Right. And I don't think that there is ever going to be such a thing.
No, there isn't. There is, you still, because I still did the counseling.
It's like trying to get a really hard steel without doing all the tempering, to use kind of an engineering phrase.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist. If you want something, you kind of have to build it.
If you have depression, and look, I'm not anti-medication. I'm not anti-pharma. For some people, it does work, and they need that. But
as a starting place,
right? And,
but
you're just masking the situation. You're just masking the symptoms.
Yeah,
and the symptoms are different for everyone. Sometimes it's sexual trauma. Sometimes it's just chemical. Sometimes your dad made a comment once when you were 12. It's
at a very bad moment.
Yeah, sometimes it's a combination.
When you were 11, it wouldn't have mattered. When you're 13, it wouldn't have mattered. But you were at this place when you were 12, and it just like crushed you.
But you got to you got to recognize
it's not a bad dad thing. It's just
and medication is, again, I am not banging it for it has saved people's lives. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that if you're on medication, you still have to do the work. Just like if you do mushrooms or LSD or DMT or whatever, you still have to do work and you have to figure what that is. And sometimes that's working with a professional, but so I did the mushrooms and I went downtown in Annapolis. I got an Airbnb and I did the classic thing, which is I took too low of a dose. And that's the biggest danger of this. And you would think that I'd say the opposite. I took like 2 grams and because I was scared. And you know what? In for a penny, in for a pound, you got to do it. And what's interesting was, and this connects to when I testified in front of the Senate, the state Senate and the state House of Representatives for the law they passed last year. But one of
the things I love about you is, in some ways, you're a bit fearless.
Well, I'm not fearless. I pushed through that because I just, I'm scared of shit. I get scared every time I go up on stage. I'm still scared. I'd like to say I'm not, but that's what I think real courage is, right? Is not feeling no fear. It's doing something despite the fear. Well,
I think that's what I think the word courage wraps it all in a nice little neat cell where people need to realize that it isn't about being less afraid. It's about
managing the fear,
being more brave.
So I take 2 grams and I'm sitting there and I'm feeling the effects of it, and it's like Pink Floyd, like I turned to look and it was gone. I felt there was something with me. It was like a shadow, and every time I turned, it was gone, and it wasn't scary. And so finally, I laid down and listened to music, and it was just amazing and everything. But I knew I wasn't going to be on a full trip. But I felt like a presence in my head going through my brain, like you would go through your parents' attic, after they died, rooting through boxes, looking through old stuff. And I felt something going through there, and it's like, every once in a while, it would interrupt the music I was listening to. Say, well, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's my dog when I was 8." And they're like, "Okay." They're like, "What's this?" I'm like, that was a car crash that I had, but someone else was driving." And they're like, "Okay." Well, then it came to this girl, and they said, "What's this?" I'm like, "It's some girl from when I was a junior in high school." They said, "What's her name?" I'm like, "I don't know." They said, "What was her deal?" I'm like, "I don't know." They said, "All right, we'll come back to that." I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "We'll come back to that."
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it sat there for 3 years. So then I did my trip, and
kind of something that was important, but
and we never
you weren't ready to deal with it yet.
I'll come back to that, as they said.
Yeah.
So I did my 2 gram trip, and it was a light trip, and I was very disappointed because I was waiting for that earth shattering moment that everyone tells you about, and I was so upset. I started to cry, and I'm not a crier. I hate crying, but I was just so frustrated. I'm like, fuck, even mushrooms doesn't work for me. Nothing fucking works, Mm-hmm. Yet I can't kill myself. What the fuck? And then I noticed the next day, I'm like, my suicidal thoughts were gone. Like I didn't have that breakthrough that everyone talks about, but my suicidal thoughts were gone. Well, I mean, like I didn't have that tangible, like this is that aha, that like
the lever turned.
Yeah, but I
you
felt
just
like
didn't notice it.
But the suicidal thoughts were gone. Now I still had the depression, but not having the suicidal thoughts, I was like, the wave of relief. I didn't have someone trying to kill me. It was just staggering. I had someone inside me trying to kill me for 8 years, constantly, every day, every moment. I had someone trying to kill me, and that was gone. It was almost my reward. So jumping forward, so that was 2020. That happened.
Well, let's just put a pin in that for a second. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
That's amazing.
But so this is
maybe it doesn't have to be something external. Maybe it's just
is it the chemical? Is it the psilocybin, or is it the trip? And the studies right now are saying yes, it is the psilocybin and it is the trip, because right now they're doing studies where they're giving people the psilocybin without the reactionary. They've been able to modify it, so you're not getting the trip, but you're getting the psilocybin. They want to see, are you still getting that relief for whatever you're?
No visuals and
no trip, but are you still getting it? And so the studies are going on right now. So I'm really excited to see what that is. But some purists would say, no, you need the experience. So here's what it is. So jump forward 3 years later, and I did my Ignite thing. And if you guys have notes, you can put it in. Feel free to put it into the podcast notes. But I did that thing where I talked about this, and I was and by the way, we're a small town here, so I have a lot of clients in town. I know everybody in town. That's not a flex. The town is the size of this room. So when there's 700 people in that hall when I went out to go tell everyone that for 8 years I was going to kill myself, and I was like, holy shit, I'm about to out myself to everybody. So I did the talk. It went well. A bunch of legislators were in there, so they put together some legislature to form a task force in Maryland to go over, to recommend for 2 years rules and regulations and laws pertaining to psychedelics and everything like that. So I got calls from the legislators, and they said, "Would you testify in front of the Senate committee, House committee, and the House committee?" I said, "That's fine." So we're going. It's me sitting in a room with a bunch of lawyers who are prepping for this. And I felt overwhelmed. We're sitting in Ram's Head, which is, if you're not from around here.
It sounds overwhelming.
Yeah. And I had all these people like going, don't say this, say that, don't say that. And there's this woman next to me, and she's a facilitator and a facilitator is somebody that you work with before a trip to talk about what you want to achieve with the trip. They're there to trip sit you to make sure you're okay, and you will be okay. And then afterwards to help you deconstruct that. And that's what she does.
Help you examine it.
Right. So she's sitting next to me, and she's, I guess I could use her nickname. They call her Grateful Deb. Her name's Deb.
Okay.
Because she's probably about 60. She's got the dresses. She jingles when she walks because she's got the bracelets, and she's very airy-fairy. I am not that. I am very pragmatic, and I'm not airy-fairy, but she's a lovely person. She's great. So she's sitting next to me like you are, Heath, and she goes, and we're surrounded by people, and they're arguing about something. And so I said, I just need a break. So I said, you're a facilitator. And she says, I worked with people before, during, and after. And she goes, I help people deconstruct it. She goes, for example, did you ever have anything during a trip you didn't quite understand? And I said, I told her the story about the girl.
Yeah.
Where they said, who's she? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what's her name? I don't know. So I told her that, and she goes, you know what that's about. I said, I don't. I was getting a little impatient. I'm like, I don't. She goes, close your eyes. Now, this was in the middle of the back room of a bar with all these lawyers around me. Everyone's jabbering and stuff. And she goes, close your eyes. And I'm like, no. And she goes, just close your eyes. And I felt stupid. And she goes, you know the answer. And I said, I don't. And she goes, you do. So I closed my eyes. I just wanted to shut up. And she goes, what was the importance of that girl? And before I could say anything, I could think of anything else to say, I said, because she's the first girl that made me feel attractive, that made me feel desirable, that made me feel like someone cared about me, that above other people. And she made me feel important. And that's the first time that ever happened to me. And I opened my eyes like, holy fuck. And she goes, yeah, that's in all of us. You know the answer to that. And she goes, that's what a facilitator does, And I was blown away and very like people start talking to me again. I'm like, I need like 10 minutes to process this because I don't, I hadn't thought about that girl in 35 years. I don't even know her name. I couldn't even picture her in my head, but that girl whose name I don't know and whose face I can't remember was so significant to me, and how many of those moments do we have in us like that are locked in there?
Right. Right.
So
maybe she's an archetype of a bunch of girls that
maybe
you've known in your life, and it's not a single person, but it's just like coagulation.
But the psychedelics, they do unlock all that, to a great point where that they're able to, that stuff's inside you, and you can have a therapist that that walks you through all these things. And how long will it take you through therapy? Have you done therapy?
No.
Have you done therapy?
I should
Never
modify
done therapy.
that a little bit. I've been to some therapy, not a lot, but I've when I first went, I was 15. My parents were going through some stuff, and
It's a tough age.
I was the one that was left at home with the parents that were going through shit. I didn't get being the third child. I didn't get the young parents that were doing a bunch of stuff. I got the parents that were just on the precipice of middle age.
Oh, my parents were
and
super
trying
young.
to figure out how to deal with it, and they wanted to involve me in their shit, and it was not good. So I avoided therapy. Yeah.
So my brother,
Therapy hasn't been something I've been really looking for.
I saw a therapist, and she was like Irish Catholic and stuff. She was very sweet, but she was older, and she just wasn't getting it. What was she saying? She was trying to talk me into a divorce, actually. And then
Sounds like a great therapist.
she was very nice. And then right before Christmas, I came in, and she was very quiet. And I said, "What's wrong?" Because I like poking in people's heads and stuff. And she
Not you, Tim.
And she told me her boyfriend died in a car crash like the day before. So we talked about that for an hour, and she cried. I held her, and she goes, "I can't charge you for this." And I said, "This was the most helpful session we've had because I'm a control freak." So my brother, I told you he was seeing that therapist to get over the 25-year-old he broke up with. And
how old was he at the time?
43. So he found this therapist, and she was in the UK. It was over Zoom, and our first session was on January 6th, 2021. And I remember because we had a session, and on the TV was all the shit going down at the Capitol. So I was very distracted during that whole thing. But she was she's 24, and she had like these sleeve tattoos, and she plays bass and she played with Funkadelic sometimes whenever they came, and I'm like, dude, she's 24. She was fucking because she was a integration therapist. So it wasn't she had her degree and everything. She got her degree and she worked for like some group, but she was striking out on her own. And she was the thing was, he goes, I think you should see one for the trip. But she's a licensed therapist. So I never actually had the trip with her. But she was an amazing therapist because she pushed and she wouldn't let me, bullshit. And she was just, she was phenomenal. Absolutely. She was so incredible that I'm like, oh, this is what a therapist is supposed to be. And I tried to explain to people, I got a therapist in the UK who's 24, sleeve tattoos. She got knocked up when she was 19. She got, I'm like, she's a genius. She's spectacular. So if you can find someone like that, then you got to hold on to them because there's just so few who are like that. Because therapy doesn't work sometimes you say therapy didn't work for me. Well, it was your therapist that didn't work for you.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. It has to do with finding the right person. It's like getting a massage. You have to find somebody that understands what you need.
It's like a yoga teacher.
Yes,
I mean,
that's
exactly.
That's really the best example.
People say I don't like yoga. Yoga's not for me. Like you haven't found the right instructors. So I think we were really fortunate to find, and we connect with the same yoga teacher.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
Not every yoga class is created equal.
I was complaining to Allie just the other day about some of the other yoga teachers, and she goes, "I think it's just that you just like me," and I go, "I think you're probably right."
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
my therapist.
It's nothing wrong with the other yoga teachers. They're just not for me.
I gotta get into yoga.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
I feel
the one we go to. I mean, our main yoga teacher. She's just a fantastic person.
Do you guys do like the meditation part of it? Because so that's one thing that did help me during the depression is I bought what was it called? Sam Harris. What was it called? Waking Up. It was like $100 for a year. But he also, like, if you can't afford it, he'll give it to you. He's a great guy.
I listened to him a lot during the pandemic.
He's great. But he taught, because, my mind races as a lot of people, like I'm type A and type, so I tried meditation for a while and I just couldn't do it. But his app got me into it. And now I use Apple, because I pay for the whole Apple suite. I use Apple Fitness because they have the meditation. I will say I did it every day at work, sometimes twice, because I was going through hell because, again, my family was falling apart. So I had depression and my family falling apart. But I would do the meditation. I'm telling you, man, that was goddamn amazing. And I'll go through stages where I'll do it for a month or so and I get very disciplined and then you get out of it. But I mean, is that part of what you guys do with yoga?
I've dabbled with a little bit of meditation, but we do a very strict set sequence called Ashtanga. Your body learns it.
Let's back up. What's Ashtanga? Is it a discipline?
Yep. It's a series. So
it's a style of yoga.
Step by step by step, you do the same thing every time.
Okay.
So what I found for me is your body learns it almost before your mind learns it. And after practicing it for 5 years now, it feels like a meditation to me every time I go.
It is.
It's a moving meditation where your body just takes over and does this sequence. And it's one of the only times in my life my mind is just completely
You're independent
calm.
on a mat. You're independent in the room, but you're part of a community that's all independent in the room with the same goals.
You got a very calm demeanor that kind of radiates.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not...
That's
a great way.
I've been told that it's pretty natural. Like
I like people like being around people like you because I'm not. I can be calm. I mean, I'm talking your ear off now, but I mean that's the point, right?
Yeah, that's the point.
But I like being around people that just have that serenity.
Well, man, when you were talking about what did you call it? Gray drinker. I mean, I felt like I was talking to myself.
Why?
Right there, because I did the same shit, man, for years and years. I've been a single dad for like 18 years. When the kid would go to bed at night, sit there, watch a little hockey game on TV. Vodka. It was always vodka for me. But,
like how many? Like, be honest.
like
Because I lied for years. People would ask me, but
Zach is always honest.
I was doing like 8 a night.
Between 4, some nights were a little heavy. Like when I first started out, right? I'd get the big bottle of Svedka, Swedish vodka, and I'd buy one a week. One of these.
See, that's
big
it.
bottles a week.
You probably could set your watch by how much you went through a week, what time you started, what time you finished, and everything. Yeah, and it gives you the illusion of control because nothing ever changes. And in all honesty, you probably could have done that for the rest of your life.
Well, yeah, I got up. I wasn't late for work in the morning.
Right.
I was highly functional. But then all of a sudden, it was like, oh shit, I had to get a bottle and a half this week, or I ended up getting the 2 bottles.
Do that, but...
And I was hungover in the morning, but like I didn't realize it.
Because you're hungover all the time.
Because you're hungover all the time.
And lacking sleep because you're drinking that much alcohol. You're not actually getting REM sleep at night.
Your sleep, what you said about sleep, like I hugely identify with that because it was the same shit. And not to
Did you joke about it with people? Like, were you open about it? I kind of was, to the point that everyone joked about my drinking because I wasn't out of control. I was never drunk, but like if you listen to the podcast I had we were always talking about my drinking.
Yeah.
We're always, joking about it and everything, but because it gives you the element of control because you're controlling you're making fun of it. You're laughing about it.
Right. Well, I mean, I'd have buddies come over to the house, and my house was like the open house. Oh, I'm coming over for the game tonight, and we would all drink together. And
see, I prefer drinking alone. I mean, not in a maudlin way.
Yeah.
Because I was doing a lot of writing, I was doing stuff. And plus, I'm an outgoing person. I have a ton of friends, but I like being alone a lot.
Well, I would drink alone too, and it's just not
in a bad way.
But couldn't get to sleep. Like without a couple drinks. If for some reason I didn't have a drink that day. I need, I was out late, had to do something.
Make up for it the next night?
No, I'm just going to have one drink before bed, just need a little nightcap. And
we'd go to my mom's house because I'm freaky about driving. I have to drive everywhere. So we'd go to my mom's house for Christmas Eve, or we'd go out for like a fundraiser here, and I wouldn't drink. But if we got home like around 11:30, I felt like I was like almost chugging them because I had to catch up.
Yeah.
It's just, and the thought of going to bed without having a few drinks was just crazy to me. And if I only had like 3 drinks, I felt like kind of like almost proud of myself. It weighed on me. I always knew. I mean, I don't know about you, but I always knew there was an issue. But the problem was that everything was so controlled and so regimented.
It's not a problem.
It's not. Well, I knew it was a problem.
That's what you said to yourself.
Yeah.
No, you're functional.
But the issue was the number of times I said, I'm going to quit on Monday. I'm going to quit on Monday. And Monday just never came. As a matter of fact, if I didn't have my friend Mike Renzel, and he's the one who called me after that we all got together and said, hey, dude, can we talk? And if he goes, and he's the one, pick a day next week and just don't drink. And I was like, I just wanted to, I didn't want to, I'm a people pleaser. So I didn't want to disappoint him. So I'm like, I'll just patronize him and do it. And then when it was difficult, and he's like, kind of difficult, why don't you take a week? And I'm like, fuck. And I just, but the reason I didn't drink wasn't for me, it was because I didn't want to disappoint Mike. I didn't want to have to call him and say, I caved. And for the next few, he goes, for 30 days, I want you to call me every day or text me every day and let me know how it's going and be honest. So I just thought, I'll just do it for a month just to get him off my ass. But I didn't want to report that I'd fallen, that I did, because I'm an all or nothing person. If I had a cigarette right now, I'd be back, and so that's why I don't drink at all. I don't do meetings. I don't, I'm not an alcoholic. I just don't drink, but after a while, you're just like, all right, I got to kind of hold on that. I don't want to break my streak now. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Did you quit drinking?
Yeah.
Completely?
January 6th, 2020.
Yeah. So you were right before me.
I went to my first yoga class and,
well, why'd you stop?
Well, I was dealing with some physical issues. I got diagnosed with like autoimmune. Oh,
yes. So the inflammation.
Yeah, inflammation. Ankylosing spondylitis. Walking with a cane.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah.
Was that bad?
I was fucked up. I was like 50, 60 pounds heavier. So I started going to yoga, and it is fucking hell on earth.
Wait, how tall are you?
Trying to go to yoga hungover. I'm like 5'7".
And how much you weigh?
I'm like 165, 170 now.
So you were cracking too.
Yeah. 216 was my point where like, yo, I gotta fucking do something. going to yoga.
But what was all right, so like what was, so you got canes, you got the inflammation. Like what's the aha moment? Like mine was just was my friend calling. I mean, I can pin it to that.
Well, I was just like, I'm going to start going to yoga. And the first yoga class, I mean, I felt like I was doing something. There were cute girls around, you know, like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then I just started going like it was my fucking job because I wasn't working because I was so fucked up.
Wow.
And
so you were on canes and doing this though?
well, it would flare up and I'd need the cane. But once I started doing the yoga, I didn't have the flare-ups anymore. I mean, it took a couple weeks. It took about a month getting through it.
How much were you drinking though?
A lot.
Like in a night? Like let's say what's 5? Wait, no, it's what, 2 ounces?
2 fingers.
Yeah,
No.
2 fingers. So
I'd say that big bottle of vodka, there were nights when I'd polish off half of it.
fuck. That's okay.
Yeah.
So you were in. So was that? I mean, that doesn't help the inflammation.
But I wasn't getting like hammered drunk.
I know,
either,
that's the
you know?
problem.
That was
Yeah.
the weird shit.
Well, you like
get the
you
tolerance.
said, the
Yeah.
tolerance goes up. The tolerance goes up, and it's one of the reasons why I quit drinking is because I was going to these classes and I started realizing just exactly how good I had it.
You and I quit drinking around the same time. Well, maybe you were a little bit after me.
Yeah, no,
It's been 5 years for me.
it's I don't even know how long it's been because I decided and I didn't write it down and I just don't. It's not like I can't have a drink. I just don't drink.
Yeah.
You know.
I have a drink now.
You do now?
Yep.
I can't.
If I drink more than 2, I just feel shitty. Like, it just makes me feel shitty. But, you know, like if I go out with people, like look at the specialty cocktail menu, have one. It's not an issue for me. But
I just switched over to getting the mocktails.
They're expensive though. I'm drinking right now. I got the Athletic.
They're not as expensive as drinking every night.
Yeah. And the Guinness, I got the Guinness Zero because we go to Ireland a lot with my family, my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And we're at the pub every night, and I felt kind of weird. And then I had this, like I feel like part of it. But I mean, so
well, that's a big reason why a lot of people keep drinking.
well, I'm not a social drinker,
Is they wanted to be a part of it.
but so I go up to my college every July, last week in July for our alumni weekend, and my friends were all Irish and Italian, and they're just crazy dudes, just crazy nutso guys, and like get arrested kind of guys. And so when we get together, like we would get, plowed when we were up there because you're away from the family, you're away from the wife, you're away, you're falling back to where you were. It's your one weekend just to be idiot. And so when I quit drinking, they're the kind of guys who bust balls too. There's nothing off limits. Like, if your mom dies, they're going to hug you and everything like that. And then, the mom jokes are going to start coming. It's just, that's Irish culture, Italian culture, black culture. It's just, you just absolutely destroy the guys you love. But no one gave me shit about not drinking the first time. And I'm like, oh, someone said something, what I mean? So I remember we got to the bar and I'm just like, this kind of sucks. It just, because you don't feel, because everyone's doing shots and everything. And I'm looking around and everyone's having a good time. And then I'm missing it out. And then by midnight, they're like falling down the stairs and one dude's puking. I'm like, I'm good. I'm all right. I'm not feeling, and also they're all like, they have these huge bellies and they're looking kind of greasy. And they're just, the guys, some of those guys, they were beautiful men and they were good looking dudes. And I'm like, what the fuck happened to you, man? And it's the booze.
Drinking.
Yeah, and you do get a little self-righteous when you stop drinking. Where I'm like, look at these guys and they're drinking. But you do get a little self-righteous, but it doesn't make it any less true. Because you guys know it when you quit drinking, it's everywhere. Booze is everywhere, and you have to just think about what having a good time meant having drinks. Like all my good times.
It even affects your dating life. Like the demographic of who you would spend time with completely changes.
100%.
I wouldn't, if I were dating now. I don't think I'd want to. Well, I don't know if I'd want to date AA either, because that's kind of, I don't want to say culty. That's shitty to say because it does help a lot of people, but it's just not for me. I think like medications.
Well,
some
we do
medications.
live in AA County.
True. Yeah. But we don't go to meetings twice a day. Well, we had a friend.
There's a lot of people that drink in this county.
Yeah, a friend
There's
of.
a lot of drinking around this because it's, people who sail.
I think it's truly everywhere. It is a huge part of culture.
Heath and I have
people drink.
Oh yeah.
Heath and I have a neighbor, a friend of ours. He was one of my best friends, and he took his life a couple months ago, and he was a raging alcoholic. And I got him into rehab 5 times last year, and he'd come back and he'd last for a couple weeks, a week or two, and then he'd go off the grid, and then he'd call me, after a month. He goes, "I need help again," and he said to me at one point, he's just like, "You're the only friend who hasn't abandoned me." And I'm like, "Dude, I didn't abandon you. I'm the only idiot to stick around. Everyone else just gave up because, you drove them away." But his memorial's tomorrow. But he's a guy that he used to tell me how, like, after he got sober the first time, which was like about 7-8 years ago, I said, "How much were you drinking really?" And he told me how much he was drinking in a day. And it was staggering. It was stunning how much he was drinking in a day. And he was drinking all the time. He'd get up in the morning and start drinking right away, and he'd be going to work. He'd be drinking all day. He would drink. He'd get up at 3 a.m. to have some drinks.
What was that movie that Nicolas Cage was in where he was drinking all the
Leaving
time?
Las Vegas. He was like that.
It sounds to me like he was trying to kill himself with alcohol.
Yeah. By the time he died, he's living in a shitty little house.
Was he still on the force?
No. He retired, but just barely. Like they let him go, and then I don't. But he was alienated from.
I never had a bad interaction with him.
No, he was alienated from his first family, alienated from his second. But it just, that drinking is, what's the expression? A man takes a drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. And he was.
I never heard that one before.
Yeah, it's an Irish expression.
Say that again? I missed it.
The man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. And my Nana always she's Irish, she always called it the thirst, and he had the thirst.
Wow.
And it's just, you could say, I mean, is it chemical? Like with the mushrooms, is it chemical or is it the experience? It's both. And,
My theory for myself after quitting drinking is that I used it to mask the things about myself that I was uncomfortable sitting with. And so I used it because I didn't like myself enough. And then I would use it more because I didn't like where I was going because I was drinking. And then I used it more because I didn't like what was going on because I was drinking. And so it was all about hating myself.
It's a self-loathing. That's exactly.
Is why I was drinking.
It's I mean, I think there's no one reason why everyone drinks. I mean, I think it's because people, you have your own reasons. It's very individual, but I think self-loathing is just common among all that.
It turns into that because when you're young and 21, like go out, hang out, like that's what you do. Like that's what I grew up doing, bar hopping, all that stuff in Baltimore. And then like at a certain point, well, I don't go out to the bars every night, but I can still have a good time at home. And then, yeah.
Just to round out what I was saying, I think the thing that I figured out in the last 5 years is that you talked about having to do the work. So I had to do the work to figure out how to be comfortable with all the parts of me.
Well, how'd you do that?
I'm still working on it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what are you doing?
What am I doing? I figured out I was undereducated for my intelligence. That doesn't mean I'm really intelligent. It just means that I was angry about things because I wasn't continuing to educate myself, and so I couldn't articulate the things that I couldn't articulate things that I was upset
that's
about.
Interesting. The vocabulary for your
I
addition.
couldn't. So I read like 60 books one year, and then the next year I read like 45, and now I read all the time, and I do podcasts all the time. And
you gotta be careful with the ones you pick, though. That's what I found.
Oh yeah, no. We were just talking about this before you got here, where we both have stopped doing as many podcasts.
Yeah, I too.
And the reason for it is just because. What did you say?
Oh, I said driving and listening to podcasts and everything I listen to and everything I consume.
All this coming in.
I had a feeling like I wasn't thinking myself.
That's a great realization.
Driving to work, I
Right.
I drive to Baltimore City every day for work, and the other night I just drove home in silence, and I was thinking and
I think it's
using
a stage.
my brain. Yeah,
I think it's a stage of learning to be with yourself, and now I'm finding myself turning these things that were very helpful and still are. Like I could sit there and listen to a podcast if I was bored or if I wanted to, but I find myself turning these things off now because I want to be there with my own thoughts because I'm using those things to check out. And the number of things that I use in my life to check out are slowly getting put aside. The useful things are set aside. I can still interact with those. The things that aren't useful, I've burnt off. I don't drink anymore. I don't do these negative things anymore. I've completely changed my diet because a lot of the crap that I was eating.
Work on that.
A lot of the crap I was eating was just comfort food. And all of these things that I'm doing to make myself comfortable, they come right back to the thing that Dave Chappelle said. You're going to do the comfortable thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing all of these comfortable things, and now I've realized that I've just created this cage that has all these interesting things that make me comfortable to avoid the things, the adventures that I'm supposed to be having that are getting louder and louder in my head. Like, I need to go do things. I don't know exactly what they are, but something.
Well, the podcast...
And this is one of them.
Well,
this is one of... scared of what everybody would think about what we may say or how to control what was said so that it's something is said that isn't said that will come back and bite me in it. I don't give a fuck about that anymore. I just don't care about that anymore. I mean, I still care about it. I still care about it, but now I realize that I shouldn't care about it. And I really, who's going to know my name in even 20 years or a year after I'm dead? Nobody. So what am I caring about? Other people hating me? Other people not liking me?
Because that's self-obsession.
Right. Yeah. And it's not what we're here for. We're here to have adventures.
I think
this is a crazy adventure. I never thought I'd ever meet anybody like Zach would be interested in even doing this kind of thing with me. And the more we get into it, the more I want to get into it.
Well, it's this self-exploration too with the people you're talking to, because you realize, like you said, I was describing you and how many people have, like, to think about the great drinker thing for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How many people
I like that phrase.
How many people are like that and they don't say it? How many women, I'll tell you what, this is, I mean, not going back to the alcohol thing, but it's just that quiet desperation that you know, that Thoreau was talking about. What I see, like the depression part, I know my people. When I see somebody, it's like I know who's one of my people. Like the suicidal stuff. I do.
You can see yourself in other people.
I know it right away at a party or something like that. I'm like, oh, they're one of mine, and they think they're fooling everyone, but they're not. But I see that in women, like the middle-aged women, like the wine mommies, like the women who are posting,
the day drinkers.
They're not. They're the ones that they have book club and they're drinking at book club, or when we have Midnight Madness here in Annapolis around Christmas, they're the ones wearing like the it's wine o'clock sweatshirts and stuff because they're the women who are unhappy in their marriage, unhappy in where they are in their career, but because they're drinking with a bunch of other women, it's cool. It's not a problem. And that's the wine mommy culture, which is insidious and it's dangerous. And it's the self-loathing and it's the fact that they don't know how to work on it. I think
they don't know how to be comfortable with themselves.
There are so many issues, not to sound like Alan Alda here, but there's so many issues that are so complex and unique to women as opposed to men, because women lose themselves in motherhood, because who are they at that point? They you become a wife.
Well, one of the reasons we have this podcast is because there's all this talk about women and supporting women and all, and men don't have.
No, they don't.
We don't, and that's one of the reasons why I want to do this.
I tell all my friends. I tell you what, I have on my calendar. I'm very good about this,
and not in a women way. I want to have this in a men's way, because men are very, very different.
But here's what I have. I have a calendar. I pay for Fantastical. I'm all about I love like gadgets and stuff like that.
No.
And so I pay for one. And
a guy that loves gadgets.
But when I talk to my friends and I find, like, because I'm pretty good at getting stuff out of people, and they're telling me I'm having a rough time with my divorce, or I'm having, I put it in my calendar to check up on them. As a recurring thing, I'll say every 2 weeks, text Vince, and I'll put it in there. And I have 30 of those. So I'll text someone and again, it sounds stupid, but and at the end of it, I said, Vince, I love you, buddy. I love you. And I want them to know that, because we don't do this. Let's talk about like the dads. We were talking about that. Like you said something earlier on, we were talking about raising kids and everything. Like, get out of bed is what you said, don't be lazy or whatever.
My dad never said that kind of thing to me.
I know,
but back at that time when we were growing up, that was said by a lot of adults to a lot of younger people.
But like, the boomers
get
now,
your lazy ass, get away from the boob tube, calling you a boob for sitting in front of the TV. They weren't wrong, but it's not necessarily a positive thing to say to somebody. Don't you have an adventure to go on and do some? Don't you want to go out with your buddies and go accomplish something while you're watching so much TV? That would have been so much more positive than get out in front of the boob tube, you lazy butt.
But it was men raising boys who their fathers weren't raising them properly. And am I condemning an entire generation? Kinda. I mean, it's just, and
they did better than the generation before them.
I don't know if they did. I really don't, because I mean, it's anecdotal. Like your dad was great, Zach, and I don't know about your dad, but my dad was fine for what it was. But I mean, I raised my son differently, and I think because I think with depression, because my dad had depression, and no one knew at the time. They didn't know what that was. And so it was just, he's selfish. He's just, he's disconnected. And I think we would treat that different now, and he would have been a better father because of it. But I think I'm so glad that you see so many, like, where it's not touchy feely. Don't be all, because I grew up Irish Catholic, where exercise the shit out of this, man up. Depression. It's just. You gotta Irish your way out of this, which meant you gotta exercise and drink and you gotta push it all down. And now we're finding out how self-destructive that is. And I like this now, where you have guys who are just looking out for each other. They're just going.
Yeah, we all need to. We all need to have a gang.
Check in on your buddies, man.
We need to have a group.
Tell them you love them. I mean that.
Like,
you sound like a hell of a friend, man. To put that shit in your calendar so you don't forget, like.
Because it's easy. Because I read these stupid studies. It drives my kids crazy. But you look at men don't. Did your dad have friends? Men stop making friends when they have kids. My dad didn't have any friends. My dad didn't have any friends, and they don't. So, and it's not healthy to bury yourself in a marriage. And with kids, you have to have an identity out that, because when you're a dad, and women don't listen to this, but I mean, women have, there's a lot of shit that goes wrong for women. But Mother's Day, the world stops, which is fine. It's great. But Father's Day is not the same thing. I'm not looking for the credit. I'm just saying, because if you're a dad, your needs come last. You're the protector, and you're supposed to be looking out for everybody, and you're supposed to make the sacrifices. You don't believe me? When next time you're at the airport, look at the dad who's like a beast of burden. He's got everyone's bags. He's schlepping with everyone running behind him, trying to keep all the shit together. No one cares about dad. No one does. How you feeling? My son saved my life. My son to this day, I fucking love this kid. Patty, he'll call me up like, "Hey, Dad, how was your day?" And I'm just like, dude, fucking thanks for asking me that, because no one does. And he's a big kid. He gives me a big bear hug all the time.
That's awesome.
And that's what
sounds like a great kid.
But men have to do this. They have to start, because there's so much pain. There's so much loneliness.
I'm gonna start poking you more about going to yoga. I was doing it for a while, but I wasn't sure if I was just annoying the shit out of you.
No. Because you get caught up in your own shit. And you need that friend sometimes.
I stopped because I didn't want to be.
No, but you get those.
But I'm gonna do it now.
I had those friends. For 8 years when I was through the depression, I did have some good friends who were always trying to get me to go out. And that was always the gag on my podcast, how Tim's a hermit and everything, because I was a hermit. I have a ton of friends. And if I had reached out to any of them with the depression, saying, any one of easily 50 people to say, if I'd called you, Heath, and I said, dude, I'm having suicidal thoughts, you'd give me a hug and you'd say, dude, what can I do? And everything.
I would have dropped what I was doing.
Exactly.
And I would have said, where are you?
And anyone. Dude, this is how I think guys are. Guys are so much simpler than women. Zach, I've known you for exactly 2 hours now. Yeah. But if you called up and said, hey, dude, I got to bend your ear. You want to meet somewhere for coffee or even go up to Dark Horse? Fuck yeah. I mean, guys got to look out for each other, man, because women have that. Women have those circles.
You made a big difference to me during the pandemic.
Well,
you came by. I think it was twice you came by, and
I was worried about you.
I was not in a good place.
Since we're all being honest, I'll tell you, I ran into Heath because we did some talking. We knew each other casually.
And
I'm not a private person, obviously, and I'm going to that's why I'm talking about killing myself. I'm not tearing up because I've told enough people about this, and I'm not doing shit for the attention. I'm doing it because I want to help people and understand that
exactly.
If you're having these thoughts, man, you're not alone. I'm telling you, you're not alone. And when I say I understand,
you got to do something.
I fucking understand.
You got to
trust me.
You got to do something.
So I saw Heath, and we went through it, and he was going through. You had divorced, and you were going through a rough time, and and I remember you were like, "I'm great. I'm doing great." And I ran into Heath at CVS one day, and he was getting some meds and everything. And I'm totally outing you here.
No, that's
and,
fine.
And dude, I could feel.
I was doing everything I could to figure out what
You looked anguished. Like you just. I hate to sound this, like looking in someone's eyes. You looked anguished, and you looked confused and absolutely panicked, and you looked like you were in physical pain. And I'm like, and I knew right away, I'm like, dude, are you okay? And you're like, yeah, I'm just going through something. I'm like, are you okay? And you're like, I have these medications, I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, oh, call me if anything's going on. But I could tell you were in crisis. And that's the guy thing, is you're like, I don't want to press, I don't want to bug. But as guys, you got to do that, where, if you see someone, dude, we don't see you anymore. We don't see you coming out. And you're like, no, I'm fine. Dude, I don't think you fucking are. I don't think you're okay, and I want to talk to you. And I don't care if I'm nagging you. I don't care if I'm bugging you. I'm going to come show up, even though you don't want me to. I'm going to come show up. That's guys have to start doing that more.
A lot of dudes don't have that, man.
No,
and it's like,
I didn't.
Yeah.
And you say
one of the things I loved
you have more
about,
people than you think.
I was to your point. One of the things that happened is I realized from all of the educating I was doing of myself is that I needed a posse to be a part of. And I think we were at the True Moon summer party, and Jacob was there, and I don't know how to make friends, so I said something, and he said, well, what? Basically, what did you want it for, or something like that? I said, I'm just trying to make friends, and he was like, give me your phone, and he put his. And this is the kind of guy that Jacob is he's just like, yeah, we can do that, and he and then. Like months went by. I think it might have even been a year, and then all of a sudden he put together the text message group that we're on, and we got Roger and Zach and Jacob and I, and Jacob will be on one of his trips, and all of a sudden he'll post some funny shit.
Yeah,
and then Roger will be like on a trip and he'll post some funny shit, and I post annoying stuff, but I post anyway, and then Zach will always comment on just about anybody's shit that they post, because
well,
I mean that's where social media is kind of.
Well, this is just
is
just the text stream.
Dude, you know what's funny about that? So this is I did use something, Zach, but someone was talking about. It was a comedian I saw who was hilarious, where he said, "Women freak out about why doesn't my husband want me to see his phone? What the fuck's going on?" And the comedian goes, "He's not fucking around on you. Every guy has a group text on his phone that no woman should see." Because
they don't want to see it. They don't want to see it.
It's sexist. It's offensive. It could be racist. It could be, But I'm a part of like 8 of those.
All right, that's good.
Yeah, it's like a lot of dudes say like shock value level shit, just like you know,
this
like
is how
you were
we
talking about your
this is how we
buddies.
communicate.
This is how we relate to each other.
Yeah,
like if we. Some of the people, in high school, some of the people you ended up being best friends with, you had a fight with them first.
Yeah.
This is
like a Western.
We're going to be best friends. Why? Because we just beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
I've seen guys go to blows at these little bars in Western Pennsylvania, and an hour later they're sitting at the bar together, bleeding and drinking. It's just being a guy's the best. It really is.
Yeah.
There's a simplicity to it. There's codes. I said, and I told my wife that I said, men have. There's a code to being a man, but I couldn't tell you what it is. We just know.
You live it.
We just know
you
these
live
things,
it. That's what's raw about it, is we live it.
And all the scumbags in your life.
That's why I really think that the key to mental health is getting away from the things that are just there for comfort and adventure. One of the things that I have really positively affected me is the yoga retreats. And it's not about yoga retreat. It's about the adventure that I went on with like-minded people. And I went and I insisted on doing things. That's my sunset has happened.
Yeah,
so.
we just went into club mode here.
Yeah.
All these lights flashing. And everything. It's very sexy in here.
It's my nighttime. Every night it does this.
Yeah, my house is super automated. It drives my wife crazy. I love this stuff.
You're a gadget guy?
Oh, yeah.
Like what kind of shit are you into?
I love home automation. I love that stuff. I'm a Mac kind of guy, so I love all those things. But yeah, when I get a car, I don't care what it can do. Like they're like, well, it's got 500 horses. I'm like, I don't care. What are the gadgets?
That's why I just bought a Tesla, because like just all the tech, like I just love that shit, man.
Yeah,
It drives itself, man. It drives itself. I went up to northern Wisconsin with my brother and his Model Y, and and on the way back to Memphis, we went through. I'm sitting in the driver's seat. I'm sitting in the driver's seat because I'm not driving, and we went through Springfield at rush hour traffic, in construction, and it did everything. Everything. There's missing cones in the construction zone. Where I thought any second now it's going to try and go into the construction lane, and that's not going to be good, and I'm going to have to grab the wheel. I never had to touch the wheel for 3 hours. It was fucking amazing.
I like being the age we are. How old are you, Zach?
46
Okay,
or 47.
Okay, so you're in the club because
This is how laid back Zach is. He doesn't know how old he is.
It's one of them. I would have to do the math.
I love being in that generation where we had like typing lessons and typewriter class, and now we are at self-driving cars. Is that
and dictation?
Because we're wowed by everything that happens that I'm like, this is the cool, like everything. I'm like, this is the coolest shit.
What age were
ever.
you when you had your first cell phone?
That was late because I was very anti-cell phone, and then I got one and I really liked it, but I didn't want to admit it. So that was 2003. But my old man, he was a gadget guy too. So he had one in his car. He had a car phone in 1987.
My grandfather was a gadget guy.
Those big ones.
My grandfather had
like right out of Wall Street.
The bag phone.
Yeah, I had that
pre-Wall Street
job.
phone, the bag phone. And he came around and he showed it to all of his grandkids. Look at this. I got this for utility reasons when Grandma and I are going up to the farm. And if we get, he could afford to buy a brand new truck, but he liked the Dodge that he had. Yeah. If it breaks down, then I can call for help.
It was like crazy expensive back then, wasn't it? Those phones were like...
per minute was crazy.
Per minute,
Yes. I don't think he ever used it, but he had the bag phone.
Yeah, I had the bag phone in my first job, but I mean, I couldn't bring it home or anything. But I would whip it out like while I was driving to, because I did TV production, so I'd be driving to the site and I'd see like some hot girl, I'd whip it out but I wouldn't have it on because it cost a fortune. But it was
my first real phone was the Prime Mobile with the headset. The ear part was the part that flicked up.
I remember that one. Just the top.
And I used to hold it up with my finger because there were, you'd be on an important phone call with a girl, and the top you push it up against your ear or something like that, and the top would go. That thing used to get hot. Yeah. And then I was like, maybe I should get a headset for this. Yeah. And so that was my first. Yeah. And I think I was 26 at the time when I got that. And now there's kids that are, they don't get to be a teenager before they get their first cell phone.
We've seen it all, though. Like go from that
That's what I'm
to
saying.
like where we are.
Yeah,
like,
2 channels
I love
on
that
UHF.
we appreciate it.
Yeah.
My kids, like
drinking
to them
from the hose in the yard.
Yeah, my kids kind of see something like, and where I'm still wowed by everything. I still have that sense of wonder, which I don't ever want to get over that because I love. I love these things. I love tech. I mean, much further technologically advanced than my kids. But we've come so far. 1990. So I got online when there was 10 websites. Because I used to be on Prodigy, which was
I remember Prodigy, yeah.
DNHC 64A.
I was pre-AOL.
That was so 1990, I was on Prodigy. And then I got on the internet when there was like 10 websites, and I thought it was spectacular. And we moved out to New Mexico, and I had an Apple laptop, but they used to be really big at the time. And I had to drive out into the desert to Thunder Technologies, and we had to work on...
How old were you?
This was 24. And I had email, but no one sent email too because no one was online.
What was it? What do you remember it?
It was. Do
you remember the address, the email address?
It was tim@thuntech.com.
Wow.
Like that. And it was so it was 1994, and then I was on Usenet and I was on all that stuff, and that's when I think 1994 is when everything changed. Like that to me is like that fault line between like the 80s kind of naivete that we were talking about, drinking out the hose, to the new world. I think the new world started in 1994 because everything since then has been cell phones and internet and just these cable TV.
My ex, she was a part of this traveling group, so they would go out in the woods and camp.
Yeah,
and she was really young when she did all of that, And she said that she went out in the woods, and when she came back, it was www.com, everything, and it was everywhere. And she was like, "What the fuck happened?"
We just not.
She checked out for like 4 years in the woods camping, and when she came back, the world was completely
She went
different.
on a 4-year camping trip?
Well, there was
Could use some GPS. Huh?
Yeah.
They were a traveling group, and they would go out into the the forest preserves and stuff like that, national parks, right? And they would stay there
4 years. That's a cult.
They had names for other people that would come out that wouldn't actually help out and gather firewood and stuff like. They were called drainbows. She was very hippy dippy.
Okay, so like a hippie thing.
Yeah. I think they built their own bus that they traveled in.
Like the Partridge Family.
Well, it was a much smaller bus. It was just the three of them.
My worry now is, and I love technology, I love all this stuff, but I just,
It's one of the things I loved about her.
our brains aren't built for this. It's just not. And I think
I think our brains are built for this, but,
I don't.
but they don't know how to manage it.
Zach,
And it's like any great thing. It's like Superman was Superman because of Krypton, but he also had kryptonite. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing.
I think Zach's right about the silence. Is that we're built for silence. That's what we're supposed to have. And
We're supposed to be comfortable with ourselves.
And I was thinking about this the other day because I have like these Bluetooth speakers and everything. I listen to a shit ton of podcasts, and which is different.
What's your favorite one? Eclectic Gentleman's supposed to be right.
Well, I love Dan Carlin, of course.
You told me that in the past.
Dan Carlin's hardcore history is elite. That's amazing. But I mean,
I've listened to some.
I listen to like some political podcasts, but I like policy, so I'm trying to get over a lot of that. And then Tim Ferriss is great.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
His are amazing.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss did the 4-day work week, the 4-day body, the 4-hour
work week. Yeah,
yeah, and he's an amazing and very interesting guy. Matter of fact, he's the one who's funding all the psychedelic research up at Johns Hopkins. He donated $13 million for their
Have
psychedelic
you listened
center.
to the Sean Ryan show at all?
Mm-mm.
He's an ex Navy SEAL.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah,
and he did a lot of the John Wick training.
Yeah, I got
stuff like that.
I'm an early
But he's
adopter.
been talking about ibogaine for a lot of the armed forces because it's more focused on. He went and did it, and he stopped drinking. He stopped all the pills that he was on.
Yeah, ibogaine.
He said, when I came back from it, I just didn't care about that stuff anymore.
Yeah. And that's what
I don't know much about ibogaine, but I definitely want to know more about it because I have a good friend of mine from Boy Scouts that I think
you're talking about him, yeah.
Yeah, I think he could really, really be helped from it. And I think this is important, very important research. In fact, one of the things I saw since we talked last was a graphic of the human brain, and there's this control center in the middle. And apparently, I don't know how true it is because this is only one post. I got to do a lot more research on it. But it shuts down that part of the brain that coordinates the rest of it, and then the rest of your brain just starts talking to each other like it's not allowed to before. And I think my philosophy on it is basically what it's doing is it allows you to recalibrate to where you're currently at versus where you lock in these calibrations when you're much younger, and allows you to just re-examine all of that and start over.
Well, yeah,
it's like recalibrating an older machine, like your car when you first get it, and then you go through the gizmos and stuff, and you recalibrate it so that it's working better.
Well, a better example is like a computer. I mean, you don't do this anymore, but you used to have to defrag your computer.
No,
Remember
yeah.
that? You get
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and basically
I did it for years.
Because what computers would do, obviously, is that in order to process quickly, data quickly, they would group the data into little blocks and stuff like that, and after a while, it would actually get all cluttered up and actually slow things down.
Yeah, the hard drive problem.
Yeah. So what happens is and I'm obviously not a scientist, I'd be making a lot more money if I was, but what the studies show with psychedelics in particular, and when we talk about psychedelics, we're mostly talking about mushrooms, because psilocybin mushrooms, because they're the most accessible. But you could say the same for LSD and ayahuasca, which is DMT. MDMA is not, which they're doing interesting research, but that's not a psychedelic. That's ecstasy. But anyway, what happens is your brain forms a lot of neural pathways, and neural pathways is the neurons that are linking together in order to make to fast track information from one place to another. So think about that sort of like if you've ever gone on the sidewalk and you're going down the block and you take a sharp right. Well, a lot of times what happens is you see a dirt path that connects the two areas on the sidewalks because pedestrians have found a quicker way to navigate the sidewalk. So pedestrians by themselves have formed a path. That's what neural pathways are, is that it's a faster way to connect information in parts of your brain. But the problem is that they become ruts. That all of a sudden, let's say that there's that.
It's like taking a new way home from work.
Right. And
you should do that on a regular basis just because.
Right. And now I'm getting outside of my depth, like I was in my depth, but is that a lot of depression, a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the things is because your neural pathways are set. That's where these habits come from. That's where addiction comes from, because what they're doing, these studies for depression, PTSD, sexual trauma, anxiety, OCD are spectacular. But you know, they're talking about, well, I mean, depression is certainly one of them, but I mean, there's so many different there's so many different things, treatments that the psilocybin will take care of. But what happens essentially is that when you go on a trip, is that, and you know, guided trip is what the studies are, it wipes out all those neural pathways. So all the neural pathways that are formed are gone. So you don't have that quick connections. And what happens, that's when you're in that glow. And if you know you've done the mushrooms, and if you haven't done a mushroom trip, I'm just telling you what it is that you're getting a lot of visuals. You're not hallucinating per se. When you close your eyes, you are, but you're not jumping off the roof. You're not running around screaming. You're very in control, and you're aware of what's going on. But then after your trip is done, they call it the glow, and you're in a glow for 2, 3, 4 days. And I always say to people, do not make any decisions within that glow period. And I know I have people who've quit their jobs, who've decided to leave spouses, and then after a while, I'm like, let everything settle, because you are in that afterglow of the trip. But what happens is that with, they're doing amazing studies with addiction right now at Johns Hopkins. Alcohol, drugs, nicotine, they're doing just amazing things. Because why did you ask me, why was I drinking? And I said, because to get to sleep. There's more to it than that. And I don't know a lot of the reasons, but a lot of it was that I formed that neural pathway that Zach and I were drinking at night because we drink at night.
This is what we do, yeah. I was doing the same thing. I was known at the it's the Dark Horse now. I would go in there when it was ebb tide.
Love ebb tide.
And I was one and done. I'd go in there and I'd have a bourbon and I'd go home. Mm-hmm. And then I usually have a bourbon at home.
Yeah.
Well, I'd eat my dinner and then I'd watch way too much Netflix until I have to go to bed or I'm not going to be able to function tomorrow.
So Sean, the podcast host, saying,
but
I didn't have a taste for this anymore. I didn't even want it. That's because those neural pathways are gone. It's just, and again, the work's very important. You don't have an addiction to alcohol and then all of a sudden take the trip and you're like, I'm fine. You have work to do. You got to find out why you were drinking and all those.
Yeah, you got to find something to replace it. You can't just. You'll end up back there. It's like one thing that I heard. I forget which podcast I heard it on. I think it was Alex Hormozy who was talking about it, and he was talking about when all of these guys came back from Vietnam. Yeah, and they had been doing drugs study over there, and they came back and they basically just walked away from it. And it wasn't that they.
Well, you got walked away from the drug usage, and we're talking heroin, and that's
some serious shit. That has some really anyway, the idea is that they were put in a completely different environment, and that's how they were able to just cope, to just walk away from it.
Well, the thought was that they were in this environment.
They had a family. They had an environment that they wanted to be a part of.
So they didn't need that addiction anymore.
Right, and I don't know if you've heard about this rat thing.
It was connected to it. It was a Swedish study.
I can't remember his name, but they put a rat in a cage with just water that had cocaine in it, and he would just drink the cocaine until it died, right? And then they put it in this lavish farm where these rats had their families and they had all these toys to play with and all these things to do, and they put it in there and they ignored it. They weren't interested in it because they had better shit to do. Mm. And I have a feeling that has a lot to do with everything that we're talking about here. is that we're all in some sort of a simulation sort of life that is simulating life, but this isn't what we're meant to be doing. And we're all really kind of bored to shit with it. And we'd rather be doing something else, but we've all been taught, like, this is what you do with your life. And I just think it's not true.
It's sitting in a box for 8 hours a day, looking at the screen, pressing buttons.
With this expensive car that we really like, but it's sitting there 95% of the time not doing anything. So do we really need it? No. All these expensive gadgets are great to play with, but unless you're literally using them for something, do you really need them? No.
You ever see the movie, the documentary Happy?
No.
It's good, man. So
know
basically, it won some awards about 7-8 years ago, maybe. And it was a documentary.
I don't think I have seen it. The reason I was hesitating is because I've watched so much stuff in the last 5 years that I can't remember the name of.
And they're trying to find out. They're trying to talk about what we were talking about. They're trying to suss it apart. Why are some people happy? Why are some people unhappy? And they went to a house that's on the water that's got everything, and the people are just miserable. And they go to the slums of Bangladesh. It's not Bangladesh. Yeah, no, it was over
they got
there.
dirt floors and a single light bulb.
It was that. They didn't have a light bulb. It was the shanties where they go down the alley and people lived in crates that were probably about the size of this area. So it was probably about 10 by 10. And there were people who lived in that. And there's one guy who was a cabbie, and he lived there. He had no running water. He had no electricity. There's rats everywhere. And they taught him. He goes, "I'm happy. And so why the fuck is a guy living in an alley in a box with no running water or electricity? How the hell is he happy?" And the house, the $4 million house in Malibu where they interviewed the people and they're miserable. Why? And you could come up with a zillion different reasons. And this documentary explores all these things, And what is happy anyway? Like, no one's happy. There's pockets of happy. Dennis Leary said that once, that he goes, there's no such thing as happy. There's pockets of happiness or even contentment. Happiness is a cigarette after a meal.
I think it's about meaning.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is that we think of happiness as going, I'm supposed to be happy, and if I'm not, then I'm miserable. Yeah. And that's bullshit. You're not happy.
That's a great way to make people unhappy, is to teach them that they're supposed to be happy.
Right.
All of the time.
Right. And that's not, that's sort of like my aunt, she bounced from guy to guy throughout her entire life because she was beautiful, and women and men would fall for her. And the thing with her is that she'd be with a guy and she'd have that new love, the oxytocin and all the endorphins and everything that goes with being in love. And after a couple months, it goes away. And she thought when that went away, it meant that things were bad. So she'd go and she'd find another guy, and she bounced, and guys would fall over. She was beautiful, and she lived her life like that. And it's hard to explain to somebody, this is not love and relationships are transient. They evolve. The first part's awesome. The first few months where you're in love and you're having sex like 20 times a day and that's phenomenal. But it evolves into something else, and then marriage evolves into something else. And each thing but you don't get that rush you do in the beginning. That's the difference. So I think happiness is the same way. Someone's like, I have to be like happy all the time. And Facebook's full of shit. The number of people, especially women, who portray their lives as they're happy. It's all a lie. Yeah. It's all a lie. Some of the people who are the most vocal about being happy and their kids and everything, their lives are miserable. And I know that because I know them in real life. And I'm like, they're barely holding shit together, but you have to portray being happy. And happiness is ethereal. I don't even know if happiness exists. I mean, if you thought about what is happiness, because you're going to revert back to contentment, and which is different than happiness. It's.
I like to segue back to Zach talking about just turning everything off and sitting with himself when he's driving home.
Yeah,
I've been doing that more. I don't think it's necessarily a particularly hard thing to learn how to do, but it's a necessity.
Mindfulness had its. Remember, that was the hot thing about 4 years ago. Was meditation and mindfulness. Mindfulness was the thing. And what's mindfulness? Mindfulness is that you are present. What was that Yoda said when he was in Dagobah the swamp and he was criticizing? He goes, "A man who's your thoughts were never on where you were and what you were doing," which is mindfulness. Is that I do a ton of gardening, which can be very spiritual in its own way. It can be very it can be what's the word I'm looking for? Almost a religious experience. But I always have my earbuds in, So I'm not listening and I'm not paying, but you should be. We're a time where I am taking care of this plant, and that's all I'm going to do in this moment is take care of this plant. And mindfulness 4 years ago was I'm going to do the dishes, but that's all I'm going to do is wash these dishes because there's value to that. That's what mindfulness is.
Yeah.
And that's what, Zach, you're driving home. Maybe you're not thinking anything, but you are going to drive and you're going to experience the speed. You're going to experience that's what
efficiency for efficiency's sake.
Well,
you're trying to learn and get the gardening done all at once.
Yeah, but
instead of
we're not built that way.
Yeah, no, you're supposed to be fully. Like one of the things I think, and I'm surmising, so correct me if I'm wrong, that you enjoy being alone is because you like to be involved in the things that you like, and it's an opportunity for you to do that, and and you get the flow state.
There was, the most amazing experience I had in my life ever. To this day, I still think about it a lot. Maybe every couple of days I'll think about it. And it was...
It isn't the Roman Empire, is it?
I do think about the Roman Empire every day. It was in 2020, and I went on a big trip. And it was my third trip, and I did like 4.5 grams, which was a lot. And this goes to the mindfulness thing because... so my wife knew I was going to do this. She took the kids to the neighbors, in Bay Ridge, and they went swimming, and I did a lot, and I'm sitting there, and it was in May, late May, so it was probably just a couple weeks earlier than it is now, and it was the gloaming where the sun went down, it was beyond twilight, and in the house was kind of dark and gray, and I didn't have any lights on because I was sitting in this chair, and I was very lonely. Like it felt lonely, it felt almost painfully lonely, and the mushrooms kind of like feel lonely, like just. Whatever you're feeling, because there's no negative emotions.
Just feel it for right now.
Be here and be lonely and just experience that. This sounds frou-frou, I know. It sounds stupid, but...
Not to me.
So I felt lonely. Then I put on music, and it was Into the Mystic by Van Morrison, and that was...
I love that song.
That was my wedding song for my wife and I. That was
love
our first
that song.
dance. And, dude, this was the most... Did you ever see Ratatouille, the movie?
Yeah.
And
I've never seen
at one scene,
it's a good movie.
The one scene is there's a restaurant critic who comes in and eats the ratatouille, which is a French peasant dish, and there's this like rush where it goes whoosh, and he's like taken back to his childhood. I had that essentially was on the mushrooms, and I was listening to Into the Mystic, which is our wedding song, and all of a sudden I felt like almost pulled, like a physical pull. And when I trip, I'm completely coherent, like as I am right now. I know I'm getting the visuals. I went back to 25 years earlier, 22 years later, which was our wedding night, our wedding where we were doing our first dance. And dude, it was the most, I could smell the room.
Wow.
I could look around the room. It was the reception. Everyone was watching us dance. And I could see every single person in the room. Like I'm looking at you, Zach, and I'm looking at your hat, and I'm looking at your shirt, and I'm looking at your bracelet, and I'm looking at the studs on that couch. Every detail in the room was in high definition. I could see the waiters and waitresses clearing the table in the back. I looked at everybody. I saw my mom smiling and with like a tear going down. And I know that what I was seeing was exactly what total recall to what happened there. I could feel my wife's beads on her dress. My wife was stunning. On that day, I could feel the beads under my fingers as we danced. I could smell her hair. I could feel the heat coming off her body as my hands were on it, and as we danced. And I knew at the time, it wasn't like a dream where you don't know it. I'm like, holy shit, I'm going back in time, and although I know better, I'm like, I was there. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I could feel like my shoe coming untied, from that day because it was too loose as we danced. And it was, and for the entirety of the song, as I listened to it sitting in a chair in the dark, feeling lonely, it was the most incredible experience I had in my entire life by far. And it lasted 3.5 minutes, the same length as the song. And then as the song ended, I hugged her, and it just all of a sudden I faded out, and I was sitting there. And if I had Grateful Deb, who the facilitator sitting there, she would say, "What did that tell you?" And I'd say, "There was a time when we were very much in love, and she was the most important thing before life became complicated, before we had kids and a house and a mortgage, and resentment, which is is a poison to a relationship. Before all that, We were dancing to Into the Mystic, absolutely in love with those endorphins and everything chugging through it. And it reminded me how important she was to me and what we meant to each other, and it's just moments like that in a trip unlocks all that. It just, and I think with a facilitator, with anyone else, with, you can access those things. That's the most incredible thing that's ever happened in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you still feel that sense of loneliness after that?
No,
or
I didn't.
No, it went away.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And what I realized was, you guys have had wives. I mean, it just, you get to a point of no return in a marriage. And I always say that resentment is like cancer. Once you have resentment, you're done. Once bitterness is part of a marriage, you might as well just end it. It's a cancer. And what I learned was when you get bitter and angry, you feel that resentment and you cut yourself off saying, you should be giving me these things. And there's times with the compromise saying, all right, I have to meet you halfway and I've got to make that effort. And because you're angry and you're resentful and you're lonely too, because you just think of that going, I'm pissed at you because you're not the same woman you were, and that you don't communicate with me anymore, and you don't hug. There's no affection and everything. And then what I saw there was she needs affection too. She needs loneliness too. And I'm better at those things than she is.
I think what you're, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I think what you're saying is that the key to a lot of this is empathy.
Yeah, and that's what you said before. You're right.
Yeah.
And it even goes.
I noticed this. I don't really talk about work very much, but I noticed this in the calming effect on me because you get these inquiries from people. What I end up doing with the user group that I support is I'm often inundated with very stupid questions.
Mm-hmm.
And what I just realized, and I don't know why it took me so long in my career to realize this, is that by the time that I get these inquiries from people, I'm not getting an inquiry about something. What I'm getting told is, I am super frustrated. You're the guy that I'm reaching out to give me some empathy. That I know I can think, like this guy, he reached out for me for this very simple thing, and he even said, I'm going to feel stupid after you tell me what the answer to this is. And I go, yeah, you probably are, but it's okay. And it was like, it was an icon that was literally in his face. If he had clicked it, he wouldn't have been on the phone call with me. But whatever was happening in his day, he was just super frustrated. And what he needed from me wasn't the solution. He needed empathy.
Because you don't know what happened to him, Roy, that day. You don't
know.
No,
I don't know.
He might have had a fender bender coming in. He and his wife might have got into it. His wife might be an alcoholic.
Somebody
don't know.
could have called him and told him somebody in his family died and he's got to finish the workday anyway because he doesn't have any more time off or whatever. I don't know what else is. So, extreme ownership.
But you have to do that across the board. I thought about that because, again, I'm center left. So I know some people who are listening to this are probably, they love Trump, they love it, and that's fine. I do not like him. But this is where I have friends who are like hard left and they'll go off on, Trump supporters and everything. I said, you have to understand this because my wife is from a small town in Western Pennsylvania, that you had Trump go to these places and he told the people, now I think he's full of shit, but he told the people that everyone's ignored you for decades. You have no industry left. Your kids are addicted to meth, crystal meth, and they have no jobs. And there's no prospects. And not only that, they laugh at you. They call you hillbillies. They call you hill rats. And you watch any of this TV that's coming out of Saturday Night Live or coming out of the West Coast, they're making fun of you people. No one gives a shit about you. I'm going to make your lives better. I care. I'm going to try and do something about this. And they were like, fuck it, let's do this. I look at the people there and go, would you have done anything different? Again, I disagree with them. I really disagree with Trump. But you have to understand, why do people do what they do? I'm pro-choice. And my daughter...
It's a really bad idea to not have empathy for a large portion of America.
And it goes two ways, I tell people.
No,
that's when you telling people
I agree with
libtards
where you're
and all
going
that.
with this, though.
But
like,
my daughter...
Empathy for both sides.
And my daughter is...
Regardless of what side you're on, because everybody's being lied to at some level all of the time.
My daughter...
I think that's happening across the board all of the time.
She's super liberal, because she's 21 female, and that just goes with the package generally.
Well, not to mention where we live is a very blue
state.
Yeah,
very blue area. So she's obviously pro-choice. I'm pro-choice and everything, and she would get so fired up at the pro-birth, pro-life people. And I said, I understand. I agree with you. I am pro-choice too. but you have to understand why people believe, because I don't give a shit. I said, you should give a shit. Is that if they have religious background, they believe that child has a soul. Or that I don't believe that it's a child. They believe it's a child, and they believe it has a soul. They believe you're murdering that child. So I disagree with them, but you have to understand where they're coming from on that. They're not totally off base. You know, they believe, like they would say, when does, because I say I don't believe it's a child, and they would say, well, when does it become a child? I don't have an answer for it. I don't. It's not a clear-cut thing. And my thing is, I think the sides don't listen to each other, and they talk. But I told my daughter, you have to understand why people believe the things they do.
You have to have empathy.
Yeah, you do. And, you know, likewise, you have to understand why you believe the things you do, and you have to be challenged. And if you're right now, if you're on Twitter, and you're on the right, you're not being challenged. You know, and if you're on Blue Sky, you're not being challenged because it's people telling you the things that you want to hear.
You're in an echo chamber.
Yeah, you need people to challenge you, and you have to think about that, and you have to do so in a productive manner. You know, you have to be able to be open and not yell at each other. You're not trying to win the argument. We got to stop trying to win the argument. You know, and if someone makes a point, you don't want to cook.
Agree. What are you going to win?
You stop owning people on Facebook.
What are you going to win? You everybody else is a loser. Is that what you're winning? It's empathy for your fellow man.
We don't have
your
it
fellow.
It's
human
sad.
being.
You know, and I just and people. I don't romanticize either. People talk about, well, things are so much worse now. I'm like, wait a minute. We've always had. I mean,
no, things are actually. They've never been better.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for all those things. But I mean,
no, I hear this all the time too, and I've even gone there where things are
so much better in the 50s.
Things are worse than they've ever been. But
yeah.
But if you look back with rose-colored glasses, you're going to think things are.
You're nostalgic for a time that never existed. And we do that.
Yeah, because we don't remember all of the shit that happened before. I think one of the things that's happening right now, and I won't even just say social media, with the internet. There's a lot of lying that's going on. That's true. But there's a lot of truth that people are not used to hearing that is also being told to everybody. And so it's our job as individuals to figure out which is with, not to rely on somebody else to tell us which is with.
Well, but that's where you get people talk about, well, the personal truth. I'm like, there's no such thing. There's the truth and there's not. And if you're not educating yourself as to what that is, like understand.
Yeah, you have to educate yourself because you could be told a piece of it, which is true. But when you take it in aggregate with everything else, you figure out that it's not true because there's other things to consider. There's other variables.
Yeah, I'm a guest on a political talk show out of Harrisburg about once a month, and I'm center left and the host is center right. And that's my problem with him is I'm like, look, I get Apple News. I read all news left, right, and center. And, you know, he and my dad, they don't read anything that leans left or what, so they don't see the same things. I'll bring things up. They go, I haven't heard that. I'm like, I've heard of it. You know, if you want to talk about Biden's laptop and everything, you know, I've heard all these things. I've read all those things. But it frustrates me, like when you're talking about, like, let's say Israel. I'm like, if you're going to start your history with Israel in 1948, then we're done. All right, yeah, because you're not understanding what the issues are because you're starting in a time frame that's very compressed. It goes before that, and you have to understand.
Well, there's also a lot of stuff that's being said just to distract everybody.
Well, yeah, but I mean, people say that, but I'm like, we're adults and we can handle multiple issues. But
are we adults?
I don't know.
I just don't think a lot of people get past junior high.
But also
with their reasoning, they don't think deeply about things. They like if you were to ask people where their thoughts came from, where their ideas came from, they'd be like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, when did you decide on that? When did you come to that conclusion yourself, or are you just espousing something that you heard somebody else say and it sounded good to you?"
Yeah,
and so
there's
now
a lot of that.
So now you're
a whole lot of that.
So now you're a part of a group that all says that this thing that they all heard is true. And you like being part of that group, and you don't want to be shamed by the rest of the group by saying, well, I'm not sure that that's true. And so there's a lot of peer pressure. So does that not sound like junior high to you?
Yeah, it
sounds like junior high to me.
It's in groups and out groups. You're either with us and you buy the whole package. For example, go back to the Democrats. You know, could you have a pro-life Democrat? No, because that breaks the rules. You know, the same way you can't have a pro-choice Republican. It breaks the rules. And that's what I was saying is that's why I'm an independent lean Democrat, but I get frustrated too because I'm like, I want the sports package I don't want the sports package. I just want a moonroof. I don't want all the other stuff that comes with this.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to put pronouns on my emails.
I firmly believe that we are in a day and age where both parties are the same party. There is a uniparty.
I don't know. There's so much difference
because
between
there's just so much alignment on disalignment that they're using it to do the things that they want to do, regardless of what needs to be done.
I think we're too big as a country. I just think we're 365 million people. We're 3,000 miles across. I don't know how this is sustainable. We're just too big as a country. But then you couldn't simply separate because it's...
Well, there's been bigger empires.
Yeah.
And we are definitely an empire.
Not by population, but
by sheer geography, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Mongols had like 20 people living there. But I mean, it's just...
well, that's true.
But I mean, it's... I don't know. I think you have to re-examine if you're progressive.
I like what's happening right now where we're actually talking about politics. We're actually talking about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing divisive about it. And I know from my own perspective that all three of us here have very different perspectives on what's going on in the nation right now. But this is what real conversation about politics is what's the problem? And the problem is the lack of empathy by most people for other people with opposing views. It's the lack of empathy that's the problem. What are we going to win by making them wrong? Now we've got to live with the losers? It doesn't make any sense.
Because it's we versus them. It's teams. This is gangs. This is all it is. It's just,
that's what they'd like us to believe.
I
don't even know who they is, but I think that's the goal.
If I get hurt by a policy, but it hurts you worse, then I'm good with that. That's where we are.
Oh, it's terrible. And there's a lot of truth to that.
It's people who just want to hurt the other people, just the other side. And for what? Down the street next to me on one side.
What gives you hope about where we're at, though?
I don't have any. I don't.
Oh, come on. You agreed with me earlier that we live in the best of times ever.
No, we do. On paper, if you look, we don't have polio
medicine,
in the pools. Yeah, I agree with all that.
But
for
all
a
this
country,
technology around us. So, we could go to Best Buy still. I'm hoping that stays around because I like going to touching gadgets before I buy them, but I don't go there as often as I used to. I used to go there every weekend just to see the new gadgets.
I wouldn't miss Best Buy.
No?
No.
Man, I like going to...
That's true. You can just order it on Amazon, have it delivered the next day, and send it back.
Yeah, if it sucks.
You go to Whole Foods and drop it off and go, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I do. I go to Best Buy just to play with this stuff before I order it.
Do you?
Yeah. That's
what's the last thing you played with when you went to Best Buy?
Well, I like their home automation stuff, but you don't get my old man for Father's Day. He's a gadget guy too, and he's a big Mac guy. And it's called a Stream Deck. You've seen that? Elgato Stream Deck?
Yep.
I've heard of it. What is it?
So basically, it's a box. It's about 6 inches by about 4 inches.
We should get you one because you could probably really use it for the podcast.
You would love this, yeah.
So what's it do?
So basically, you hook it up to a computer, mostly Mac, right? And you get the small one, which is the Stream Deck Lite or something like that. And I'm gonna get that from my old man.
Oh, that's awesome!
And
I love that.
There's 6 lighted buttons on it, or 8. There's 4 on top, 4 on the bottom, and then there's 2 buttons that can progress you through the fields right there. And you can program the button to do anything. They're basically macros. So you can have it open a link. You can have it play, fast forward. You can screen capture,
screens, change your desktop,
program, anything you want to do. Mm-hmm. But you can program all of them pretty easily because there's an app that comes along with it. I have it. I love it. I have it right there. Like, why can't you just bring up a page? Because then you got to go to Google. You got to find the web page. You got to bring it. Whereas I can just press because I can have a picture of the web page on there, and it just brings up the web page.
I think we're done.
I'm still recording.
So
your pops is pretty technologically advanced.
We just survived a brownout because we're on a battery backup.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, power just went out. We're going through a storm right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm going complete battery power, so we were good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's 70, 78. He's still into it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He hasn't lost that sense of wonder either. He's
does he have a what's the Mac you have right now? What's that one you got?
It's just a MacBook Air
with the new
I love the Mac.
It's a M1
chip.
Yeah.
No, I got the 3. I got the 2, and the next day it was available in 3, so I took it back.
My dumbass bought the Intel like 6 months before the fucking M1 came out. So I ended up buying this from Heath's roommate for $800. So it was like, done deal. One of the best moves I've made.
I love it. My old man got a Mac back in 1984.
It doesn't even have a damn fan, and it just doesn't quit. Like the battery on it lasts forever too.
Where do you we haven't talked about AI at all. Where do you stand on AI, man? What do you think?
Let's put a pin in that and take a short break. I want to get something more to drink,
All right.
and then I want to hear everything you know or don't know about AI.
What's it stand for?
Depends on who you ask, right?
Eclectic Gentleman will be right back.
I'm absolutely loving the podcast, man. So, you want to frame up the AI thing a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about just how, we grew up with this kind of technology, and we've seen, we lived pre-internet. So, and our kids will not have that kind of experience. I don't know. Maybe our kids will talk about life before artificial intelligence and life after.
You're right. That's probably going to be the dividing line for them.
So where do you stand on all of that? Have you?
I'm a big fan of just technology in general, and I sometimes I get a little reckless with it. So I remember when I first heard it a few years ago, you had people freaking out, and I can't remember what the delineation was, who was anti and who was pro. I know Elon Musk was really into it, or maybe, but there was people who were just like, this could be destructive, and there were some cases where they tried to turn it off and it wouldn't go, and there's been some scary things. But I mean, I get dazzled easily. So I use ChatGPT constantly because as a writer, I use it as it's a great tool.
I understand why. Yeah.
It's a great tool because I'll say, give me an outline for this. And it'll give me an outline, and then I can follow. I told the kids, like anything else, you can cheat, and you'll just cheat yourself. And the nuns used to tell me that. But then you find out that, everything's a tool if you use it correctly. Like, for example, my kids were forbidden to use Wikipedia when they were in grade school and high school. Which I'm like, I get that. However, you can use the sources. Like if you go to the source page for all that stuff, that's, they've done the work for you. So if you're doing a report on Scandinavia, then go to their source pages and there's all the books and everything. That's where you start. So everything's a tool if you use it correctly, but I think there's a lot of inherent dangers to it.
I think it's stupid for these schools to, like, one of the things I was told is you got to learn all these things, all of these ways of doing math, and you got to put it in your head because you can't rely on having a calculator everywhere you go.
Sister Mary Denise told me that all the time.
And they could not have been more wrong. And so when I hear them say, I remember when we were taking Isaac to go to school, and they said, well, they don't allow the kids to use Google to do searches or anything like that because they get too many results back. I'm like, so you're literally refusing them to use the tool that the rest of the world uses so that when they get out of school, they won't have any experience with it at all? That doesn't seem wise.
Well,
I understand the fear, but instilling fear in kids that are just sponges just doesn't seem wise. And if they're not going to do it, like AI, we can decide not to do it as a country, but that doesn't seem wise.
Well, I teach a class. I used to teach a class in digital marketing at my university, and I'd take a whole 3-hour class just to go over Google, how to use it correctly, because most people don't. Most people don't understand what you can do. What
you
people
can do
use,
with it. Yeah.
What most people use Google for.
And that's what the kids should have been being taught. Instead, they had their own search engine inside of the school that they couldn't even access outside of the school. It didn't make any goddamn sense.
No, and we're falling behind technologically, and also because
school-wise.
Yeah, because we have the technology, but we're not. And it's not just them. It's a lot of my coworkers. I'll see how they use it, and they're not using it correctly. It's just there's just. If I take notes from a meeting, I upload those notes and I distill them into something that's practical, and people are using them for emails. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but it can do so much more. You got a Porsche and you're just driving around the parking lot. There's some things that you can do with this. Just learn look at some YouTube videos, but learn how to use this. There's parts that scare me.
There's a lot of people that are undereducated for their intelligence.
Yeah,
and they don't want to learn anymore. They're just chasing comfort tools.
Well, and there's things that Zach will understand this too. Is that I was editing a podcast and it was fine, but to edit a podcast, there's a lot that goes into it. You got to set levels. You got to go in. You got to there's a lot that goes into editing a podcast.
You got to love it,
right? However, Adobe has like this podcast tool AI tool where you upload it, and within like 15 minutes, it's done everything for you, and it sounds amazing. Now, there would be some editors who this is how they make their living, and they would be saying, "Well, you're missing the nuances, dude. That this is something that the AI doesn't detect and everything." I'm like, look, I get where you're coming from. It's but this just if I'm paying Zach to edit a podcast for me, or I'm paying, it's going to put Zach out of business, if he's doing this, but. This is what business is going to be. So, where you're getting AI to do it for you. So you can, curse the darkness or light a candle and understand that there's a lot of jobs that went away with technology, and this is going to replace a lot of people, and it's going to replace white collar people, which hasn't really happened before. So you better understand how it works. My mom said that. My mom's a grade school principal, and
you're absolutely right.
She did when parents would come in the early days of social media. So think about 15 years ago. And the parents would come in and say, we don't understand this. And she's like, you'd better, because your kids do. And you better understand how this works. And I feel that with this country.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And I feel this way with AI is that the people like you're talking about, Heath, is where they're like, I don't understand it. You'd better, because you're not going to be able to escape what AI is going to be doing. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to use it.
It's like it's like saying, I have a horse. Why do I need a car?
Right.
Well, is your horse ever going to die?
Well, that's why people are so goddamn frustrating, though, because there's literally people out there I'm not touching AI. They're anti without even trying it, and people are like that with just about everything. But unless you take 10 hours and learn about it, take 20 minutes and play with ChatGPT, like it's a tool, and it's all how you use the tool. It's not inherently evil.
Think about automation.
Grind the silicon god. I heard that recently from Michael Saylor. And did you ever read his book, The Mobile Wave?
I did. Yeah, it's good.
I think that guy is super smart. He was just on Jordan Peterson, and I never heard Jordan Peterson sit there be quiet for so long. Michael did most of the talking, and he talked about a lot of stuff that I didn't know about him. That guy is incredibly smart.
Well, think about home automation and AI when it all wraps up. People used to say this about IoT, Internet of Things, that the internet was in everything. And so why do I need internet in my refrigerator? Why do I need internet in my washing machine? Here's why. Is because when it first starts out, everything's not integrated yet. And it's not, so you have internet in your refrigerator. It's one more thing to fix. All these things, everyone goes crazy. Now think about baby boomers as they age. And think about home automation, what it means with smart technology to wrap everything together. You have a Ring camera. You've got whatever the Yale automatic lock on your door. You've got your smart TV. You have all these things that are wrapped up together.
And I do have a Yale lock on my door.
I have all these things. But think about a boomer who says, I don't know how to do all these things. I don't know how to integrate them. Now you have AI. So someone hits the Ring doorbell, and instantly on the TV that your dad is watching, the front door pops up, and you can see who it is and go, oh, okay, thanks. And he'll say, open the front door. The front door opens, they come in. This is all integrated for someone who's like 85 years old. Then you're talking about integration. You're talking about the refrigerator saying, when you have the RF tags on all your food, and you can say, and they can say, hey, you're almost out of this, or you're out of that, or you come home and you're like, what can I make for dinner? It can tell what's in your refrigerator and freezer. AI will tell you that here's a recipe for the stuff you have in your house. These are all the things that are going to be integrated.
I got a really good example for you that's real. My parents, they lived in a house in Florida for 20 years, and I got my dad to get a new thermostat. And so I set it up for him, but I had access to it here. When he had problems with it, I fixed it from here. They moved into a home, the two of them, and they would call me and they go, it's too cold in here, and I couldn't do anything for them because these homes have zero automation. Zero. So I could help my parents when they were younger, but now that they're in a home, I can't help them at all because these homes have no automation in them at all.
My mother-in-law.
So I got a lamp like that one for my mom, and I can control it from here. In her room. I can change it. She's like, I'm bored with that color. Well, what about this one?
My mother-in-law is in her 80s, and she can't even do email. She's so stubborn, and we got her a Roomba, and she just bitched about it. She didn't want it. And she started using it. She won't admit it. She loves it. Roombas are great. Lawnmowers aren't there yet, but give them about 5 years, they're gonna be there. All this technology.
I think in 5 years they're gonna have a humanoid robot using the lawnmower they have now.
Yeah, it's just.
I think that's coming like right around the corner. The robots are coming.
Yeah, I mean, you can resist all these things, but the Borg say resistance is futile. But I mean,
it's true.
It's there to make your life easier, and they are going to make life easier, and progress goes forward. There's no going back. The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
So if you don't get used to this now, you're going to have problems with that. But I mean, they already have them. They have these ovens that are refrigerated. You put your food in the oven, and
So what do you do with Chat? What do you do with ChatGPT?
Well, I mean, for example, I love a lot of studies, but I don't understand a lot of studies because I don't have a lot of scientific training. So I'll take the study, I'll upload it, and I said, explain this in layman's terms. I got very complex. I had that genetic testing that I had done. Right? I didn't. It was when I printed it out, it was like 30 pages, and it was all very complex. I uploaded that. Now I know there's some guy who's listening to this right now pulling his hair out, going, "You uploaded a privileged document, and he's 1,000% right." I don't care. Why? Because the genie's out of the bottle. The privacy is.
Did you hear what's happened with 21?
21andMe or 31andMe or 20 whatever.
Yeah. They're about to sell all of their data, all of their data, and the guy's like, well, they can opt out. Like the guy's like, you said you wouldn't sell the data when you collected the data. Well, they can delete it. But you said you were
right. It's
so it's
so the genie's out of the bottle. So I uploaded that test and I said, explain what this means, and boom, there it is. My father, he's an accountant, so he's really big into Excel. So he teaches classes, for like businesses and everything. And
for Excel.
Yep. And he called me. He told me, he goes, hey, I couldn't figure out these formulas, so I told it what I wanted, and it gave me the formula. I just pasted it in. Boom, there you go. But it's every day I'm finding out new things that you can do with it that are work related. I have it open on my screen at all times now. Yeah, you're limited to how often. So I have 20 accounts. But because it gives you certain. But do you know, if you look in right now, you get like 5 free deep searches, which can take like 3 or 4 hours a piece. So if, let's say, you're applying to a job,
that's cool.
You're applying to a job or something, and whenever I interview for a job, I stalk everybody. I like my interviewer. I know everyone who's there. I know. That's why I have questions like, "Oh, what are you into?" And I'm like, "I love needlepoint." They're like, "I love needlepoint." I'm like, "Get out," because and people say, well, my Facebook is protected. Well, your husband's isn't, or your daughter's isn't, so I can see pictures of it. Is that creepy? I don't care. I'm looking for a job. But you get these 5 deep searches.
It's like telling somebody they're creepy because they know how technology works.
Well, yeah. I mean, don't put the stuff out there then. Don't, you know?
Well, it's all out there. It's out there. We just got to yeah, it's just not being prepared for things. So you do a lot of research with it. Do you do anything for fun with it? Do you make images? Have you played with stuff like that?
I have a little bit. I mean, they're kind of fun, but I mean, it's I do.
What do you think of the new Yeti ones?
What is that?
There's the ones with the not the Yeti, but
it's blogging, or vlogging. There's like a current trend where it's like Bigfoot if he was vlogging. I mean, it's kind of funny.
I think it's pretty funny. Zach's not really into big fads.
Well,
when everybody gets on a fad, Zach's less interested in it, which is okay.
I'm the same way.
Just
That's cool.
The whole image generation thing is just, you can do.
But these are videos.
Some very valuable shit with it, and people just make dumb images. Like, if you start really fucking around with it, like if I had access to Google VO3, I would make a goddamn feature film. I wouldn't want to make just whatever fucking, turn us into babies or whatever. But like, you can make a fucking feature film with that shit. Like,
well, they're doing incredible things. You see what they did with the Dead Sea Scrolls last week?
No.
Or earlier this week?
No, one of the guys on Doge is responsible for that.
Yeah, they took the Dead Sea Scrolls,
The ones that were burnt.
yeah, and they were able to extrapolate the information, and they found out that they were actually older than we thought they were old.
How old?
Not much older. I mean, I'm trying to remember.
Another 1,000, 2,000 years?
No, because the Old Testament was written in 500 BC. So I mean, they wouldn't be much older than that, if that. But I mean, think about like the mysteries we have, the archaeological mysteries, genetics. It's amazing. I love like anthropology and stuff like that, and I love.
What do you think of these scans that the Italians are saying they have from satellites of the Giza Plateau?
I don't know anything about it.
You don't?
No.
They say they found an entire city.
I heard that.
With these new scans that they're doing from satellite imagery.
Yeah, the only problem, and they're doing.
I just don't know how they're going to prove it.
They're doing that in the Amazon too, where they're doing.
That's LiDAR.
Yeah, they're doing that with LiDAR, and which is really interesting, But I think people they rush to conclusions about what all that means when they're talking about cities and civilizations. Like civilization's a loaded word, and it's. I get one of my worst habits, and I got a lot of them, is I argue online with.
Me too.
Because I love scientific and anthropology on Facebook. I follow these pages, and they're infested with fundamentalist Christians. I'd say like 60 to 70% of the comments going, that's impossible because the world's not more than 6,000 years old. And I'm like, here we go. I don't know why I argue with them because it's totally pointless. Because they don't have anything. I'm like, there was Noah's Ark, there was no deluge, there was no flood. There's no. I mean, you go through it because there just wasn't. Every scientific discipline and every scientific fact disproves what you believe. I don't respect that.
Well, I would argue that he didn't make. Let's take the other side of that argument. Let's say that you're a Christian and you believe in science too. What I would say is that he didn't create Adam and Eve as babies. They wouldn't survive. He created them at the age they needed to be in order to survive on their own. So if you want to believe in God and you say the earth isn't old enough to be created the way they say it is, well, he can create it at whatever age he wants. So
yeah, but well, I mean, that's where when you argue with
there's no argument there. It's like, well, if you believe in creationism, you can create it at 1 or 10 billion years old. What are you arguing for? I mean...
But then how would you know it's 6,000? Like, where would they come up with it?
I'm just saying that their argument doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, it can't be that old because the Bible says it was created at this time. Okay, well, did it create it as if it was brand new? Or did it create it as if it was 10,000 or 10 million years old when he created it? You know what I mean?
They just frustrate me. It's just, and I don't know why.
I get that.
I don't, because it's just, again, it's people who are confidently incorrect, where they don't have facts, and they do. And when you present the fact, well, this isn't my opinion. This is what the study says, and they're like, no. That just nothing frustrates me more than you're like. Well, here's all the evidence.
That's the result. That's the
result
of people having somebody else's idea. They're part of a group that they want to be part of, and they don't want to be shunned from that group. So that's a very powerful thing, getting shunned.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's that I respect in people's belief in a higher being because I don't know. I mean, I'm an atheist, but I'm a small A atheist. I'm not telling you can't believe what you want. I'm like, what do I know? Maybe there's something there. I don't think so, but sure. But where I get impatient is going, all right, when you're talking about there was a Noah's Ark and there was a deluge and there was all these things that are absolutely, even when you get more specific, that all the science points and all the anthropologists and even the University of Tel Aviv, that there was no Exodus and that the Hebrews were not in Egypt. That's just a foundation myth, and that's what comes with it. Then you're like, well, you're anti-Semitic, or you're not respecting my right to believe this. I'm like, you can believe it, but you're wrong. I'm just telling you based on that. The same way I would tell a Native American that said, well, we've always lived here. We didn't migrate 17,000 years ago. I'm like, I respect your culture, I respect your, but no, your ancestors migrated here. How do we know? Well, we have the geology, we have the genetic record. We have, we can now the advances we've made in the last 20 years are absolutely spectacular. Where we have ghost populations of of humans out there that no longer exist, and we don't know what they are, but we know they do exist. They found 2 of them in the last 2 years.
I just realized I got to go upstairs and close some windows.
All right.
Oh, shit.
We were talking about AI, then we were talking about
You're talking about
the Giza
Noah's
pyramids.
Ark.
We were all
No, I
over the
think-
place.
Yeah, we were all over the place.
But what do you think about what's going on with who do you think is going to win the AI search? Search came to one company, right? That's what happens. Then you get what was it, MySpace, and now it's what would you say replaced MySpace?
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook replaced MySpace.
Okay, so
I don't understand how Facebook still works. I don't understand.
it's just big.
I guess, but it's. I mean, beyond the like.
You do marketing for it, so you probably know better than we do.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It's all different now. Like, when you get on there, it doesn't. The algorithms are such that he said as much. That's what Zuckerberg said, is that Facebook is kind of dead the way it was. They're like, when you go on now, you're not seeing your friends' stuff. You're just seeing all this shit that's pushed at you all the time, and it's so disjointed. And by the way, even the quality of pages, and this is what I learned. We talked like 9 hours ago when we started this. We were talking about engagement. We were talking about Facebook. But
Yeah.
have you ever followed? Let's say you were following a drone page, right?
Which I do.
Which you do. Have you ever noticed once in a while there's a post that's completely unrelated to drones that's on there, and you're like, why the hell is that? Or it's kind of crazy. Here's what happens, is that, and I learned this. I learned this a few weeks ago because I was researching a problem we had, and I kind of got in a subreddit where people who own these pages were talking about it. You can make a fortune on these pages because they're monetized, just like Twitter is that if you get a certain amount of engagement, doesn't matter what kind of engagement, if you get engagement in the form of thumbs up and shares and likes and comments,
Whether they're negative or positive.
that's important. Think about that. That counts as engagement, and that you're making money. So if you're reading something, and I fell for it the other day because there's a page about Annapolis, and it's not local. I'd never seen the page before. It was the Free State, something about Maryland, and someone had a picture of Main Street, and it said, "This is First Avenue in Annapolis." That's what they said, but it's not. It's Mainstream, and there were thousands of comments saying, "Wrong. It's Main Street." They did that on purpose.
Engagement farming.
So when I went into this subreddit, because I was trying to figure out a problem, someone says sometimes I misspell something just to have people give shit, or sometimes I'll have an unrelated stupid post that people are furious about the post, and you have people who are posting about how they're furious about the post. It's all to get engagement, because like you said, doesn't matter if it's positive or negative engagement.
It's like clickbait.
Right, it's clickbait. So if you look at, like, now I'm not getting political. I don't want to talk politics. But if you look at the 5 biggest pages on Facebook right now are all conservative pages. They're what's his name? The Jewish guy, short little Jewish guy, Ben Shapiro.
Oh,
Ben Shapiro runs, and there was like this big discovery about 3 years ago when they discovered he runs like 8 simultaneously pages, or his group does, and they post things, they cross post. But when conservatives say we're being silenced on social media, they are not. They have the biggest reach, they have the biggest engagement on social media, but they're getting real paid. Again, I'm not getting political. I'm saying because there are some left pages, but they don't do it as well as conservatives do. Conservatives have it down. But remember, these guys, if I'm being cynical, this is their business. Their business is division. Their business is getting people fired up. Their business is
division.
Right.
Engagement.
So, right.
Engagement. We shouldn't say division. It's
No,
engagement.
it is not. There's division, because through division becomes engagement. And again, I'm not picking on them because I know that it's everybody, but this is everything. There's no purity left. Is that I love gardening, so I follow all these gardening pages, and oftentimes you'll have these people who come on and they'll say something conservative. Why? Because most of the people who are in gardening tend to kind of lean left because they're earthy and everything like that. And by putting something that's to the right, that's on there, people are all fired up and they're flaming them and everything. That's engagement. And this is how it works on Twitter. Remember, Cat Turd 2. This is his job. This is what he does. This is how he gets paid. By getting you fired up, he gets engagement.
And he admits as much.
Yeah, he which I thought was a very dangerous thing. I don't know when this is getting released, but when he was taking sides with Trump and Elon, because Elon is not the free speech guy. He has muzzled a lot of people and he has shadow banned a lot of people. Matt Taibbi being one of them. I'm sour on Matt Taibbi, so I took some pleasure in that. Is that he was getting shadow banned. That was very dangerous for this guy who makes his living off engagement to take on the guy who who allows access to that engagement. But this is what social media is doing. It's encouraging. And I'm not talking just about politics. I'm talking about just getting fired up at people. So if you're online and you're following something, if you're on Facebook and you're following like a hobby and they have some stupid post, that's by design. They're doing it to get you fired up, or if they say something that's completely untrue, they're doing that to get you fired up.
You probably don't want to listen to the All In podcast, but one of the guys on there, Jason Calacanis, he's their engagement farmer.
Yeah, and
he's the far left guy of the group, right? It's mostly a conservative group,
right?
But I used to get really pissed off at a lot of his stupid posts because I found them very totalitarian the way that he was speaking, and then I realized, yeah, that's by design. And something in the back of my head clicked, and I'm like, he's doing this. He didn't invent this. This is just and I think I woke up to it, and I think that's what's going to happen to all of society. They're going to eventually realize, maybe not this generation, it might take 2 generations, but they're going to realize that they have no interest in being engagement farmed.
Maybe that's the mission that we should set out upon. The Eclectic Gentleman, to fucking wake up the world, fucking engagement farming, fucking t-shirts and shit.
The hard part though is that
we should master it and then tell everybody that we've mastered it.
The hard part is that if you're making a lot of money doing this, it's very hard not to do that. There's only been 2 like really true believers, well maybe 3, like true believers I've seen when it comes to politics. Who does the Blaze? What's the Blaze? What's his guy's name?
I can't remember, but I know which one.
He was the guy who was fired from Fox News because they couldn't control him. Keith Olbermann on the left. He's a true believer. They couldn't control him. They got rid of him.
Yeah.
Maybe Steve Bannon, because he's actually not a stupid person. I just disagree with everything he says, including
I think he's massively wrong about a lot of things, but I think that he's
not stupid.
He's not stupid,
but he's a true believer. Yeah. So my point is, if Ben Shapiro
but only in what Stephen Bannon believes in.
If Ben Shapiro and Rachel Maddow and everything, if they could make more money doing the opposite of what they're doing, would they do it? Yeah, they would. I don't think a lot of them believe what they're saying. It's just the way they make their...
I think
and I can't get too high and mighty, because if I was getting paid as much as they did to do that stuff, would I sell out? I'd like to say no, but there's a chance I would.
People like that got to play a role.
Yeah.
Like when you watch a sporting event and they got the commentators, one guy's got to take this point of view, and then they go over to the other guy and he starts talking about the other team.
And we're not talking about thousands of dollars. We're talking about millions, maybe billions of dollars.
Sure. I mean,
I'm in total agreement with you. One of the guys that I think is also a true believer is Jordan Peterson.
I'm not a fan.
You don't have to be a fan. I think he really believes what he's saying, though. I don't think he's doing the things that he's doing just for engagement farming. He just believes what he believes.
Yeah, I think.
And I'll be real honest with you. A lot of my inner peace has come from things that I've learned from him.
Well, I can't judge that then. I mean, I don't like him. I don't like him as a person. I just don't care for him. But if people like him and they make some lives better for the right reasons, who am I to say?
And he has done a lot of studies on why alcohol is so bad for people and addiction. I don't know if you're aware of that part of his scientific background. He's done studies on this.
Yeah, I've read the stuff.
He doesn't talk about that or make that clear as nearly as much as he used to.
Yeah, it's hard. Purity is very difficult to find in this world, and because we're a capitalist society, and girls right today. This is what scares me is especially having a daughter, is that if you have an OnlyFans, you can make 6 figures easy. Mm-hmm. If it's 1986 and we have the internet and I'm a girl, I could go get a job and work, make my $5 an hour in 1986, $4 an hour. and work 40 hours a week, or I could show my tits on camera, and they have IP set up so that no one in your area will see it. They'll see it in Tacoma, Washington,
Right.
or in San Francisco. No one is going to see this. Would I be tempted? I mean, come on, you're making 5 figures in your as a college student.
Have you seen this one lately?
No.
I sent it to you, and you said she's a genius. Remember that one?
Yeah, the girl's fucking getting paid, man.
she leans over the camera. She's got gigantic tits. They're not naked, right? And she's talking to men about how good they are. And she's shaking the whole time.
She's getting paid.
I was just like,
But you can do that now. Now, like, people are creating virtual AI influencers, starting OnlyFans.
That's the scary part.
And people are paying for shit that's all AI generated. They don't even realize it.
yeah. And I
Like-
think that's going to go away because I think personal AI agents are going to. Did you see 6 Days?
No.
It was. I think it was 6 Days. It was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies where there were clones, and he ended up being one. Or
Sounds like
anyway, it started off with his pet died, right? And he went to the place and he got brand new version of the pet that died, just a younger one. And then they figured out that they were doing this to human beings, and they had figured out how to take their memories, and so people would die, and then they'd grow another one. And one of the things they had in there was one of the guys in the movie. He had an AI that was in his house, and he would walk in the door, and it wasn't his wife. She would greet him at the door and go, "How are you, honey?" That's like you were talking about what you think's going to happen. You tell your story about what you think's going to happen with robots.
I mean, I hope I can get a robot girlfriend one day. I would go like Brigitte Bardot, circa 1968, and I'd be totally happy having a robot companion that I could just turn her off when I want to go do something else. Like, I'd be good with that. Like,
I don't know. The Turing test, I mean, I think we're beyond that now. I mean, the Turing test is, we can't differentiate with AI what's real and what's not. We can't.
yeah.
And
Did you know AI gives you better results when you threaten it?
no,
I haven't tried it yet, but that's what I've been hearing from
I'm
couple
super
of different
polite to
people.
AI. I'm super nice because when they become our overlords, I want them to remember how nice I was to them. I was all polite. But I mean, look, I've seen like the ads like on Pornhub and stuff for like the AI stuff, and there's two things that would take me out of like the porn fantasy. Is I don't like tattoos because I'm just not because I like it, but just because
It's your age.
no, it's not that. It's just that
it's your
we're just like I've never done anything like this before. I'm like, I don't know. You have a tattoo on your neck. I don't know. But the other is the AI thing is just it just seems I don't know why. Maybe it's primal. Is that it's not real. So it takes me out of it. And someone would say, if you can't tell the difference, and I don't have a cogent argument for this. And I think it would be for the same for an AI. Do you ever see? It was great. What was the? It was shit. What was the one where they're on the island and
Lost.
no, it was the movie from about like 3 years ago or 5 years ago.
The island.
It wasn't her. It was Ex Machina.
Oh yeah, I saw
yeah.
that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah. Love that movie.
It's phenomenal, and it made me think. There's a lot of questions. If you guys haven't seen, anyone listening to this haven't seen it, it's where a Turing test is where can you determine whether something's artificial or not, and that's the holy grail for robotics. And in this, it was a test, and you've had time to see this. I'm going to spoil it, and if you're not, then just skip ahead. But in this, they bring a young man on, and he thinks it's because of his coding abilities, but what it is that the maker of this robot brings him on because they want to determine what the robot will do to get out of captivity. And will it use sexuality? Will it use her wiles? Will it lie? Will it do, seduce and do all those things? And it did all those things. And that was the Turing, that was the test. She was very attractive, and the young man is swept up in this. And it opens up a lot of questions about your girlfriend,
Yeah.
You know, is what do you want out of it? If she feels like a girlfriend, she looks like a girlfriend, she, you know, all those things, she responds, is that reality? You know,
Right.
I couldn't do that. I don't know why. I can't give you a reason why. Because you would say, look.
Remember the Star Trek movie with where Kirk he's swept up in that cloud and he's reliving where he jumps over this gorge on a horse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he wants to then he decides to leave that perfect utopia.
Right.
And the reason he does is because there's no risk in jumping over the gorge. Every time he does it, he knows he's going to make it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
that's the thing that drives all of us is we want true adventure in our life. We don't want it to be predictable. In fact, that's what drives most successful relationships. If it's too confrontational, it's not good. If it's not confrontational enough, it will end.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, I'm not saying I'd be completely happy with a robot girlfriend, but I'd be down to give it a try.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't.
It's coming.
Yeah. I mean,
we're going to get to find out.
Yeah, sign me up.
Maybe not the three of us, but
no. I mean, the
human race is going to get to find out.
You get well, and I mean, the other side is people go, look. I know. I have a friend of mine. He'll never listen to this, but I mean, he's in his late 50s. I think he's probably had sex, but it's been prostitute, and he's not attractive. He's not charismatic. He's my friend. I like him. I don't know why. He's just, you know, he's my friend, but he's never, he goes years without a hug or without someone taking care of him or being touched I feel bad. I hate loneliness. I hate loneliness. And for him, if he had
deserves that, yeah.
If he had that, yeah, I think I think he'd be okay with that. And that gets
hell,
the illusion.
you might even see him blossom in ways that he's not right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't judge those things. And
have you heard this phrase? A need unexpressed is future resentment.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
I got that from Modern Wisdom.
Yeah, it's marriage in a nutshell, really. It's just, you know. But I think, I think you're saying that there's a push pull in relationships, and that what makes it exciting, maybe. But some people just like, I want stability.
Interesting. It makes it interesting.
Yeah.
If
a plane crash is interesting.
That's too much.
Yeah,
right. That's what I'm saying. Is like if I think there's an actual number to it. Like out of 11 interactions, if more than 7 of them are confrontational, then it's too much. And if less than 4 of them don't have some sort of pushback, then it's not interesting enough. Like you and I, we don't agree on everything, right? And if we did, one of us wouldn't be necessary.
Yeah.
Why would you bother coming over here if I agreed with everything that you thought?
Right.
You just stay home and think for yourself.
I mean,
because you can agree or disagree with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think the element is the sex part is the element. Like, we're not talking like they have. That's the big thing.
Well, the intimacy is definitely something that
Zuckerberg's talking about that now. Is it Zuckerberg? Yeah, he's making virtual friends, and at first I rolled my eyes, rightfully so, because he's an idiot. But I mean, but I thought about elderly people and lonely people, and what's the difference between?
My mom spends way too much time by herself.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's
not real.
She says to me all the time, Heath, I'm so tired, and I think what she's saying is like, when does this ride end?
Yeah, how old is she?
She's 88.
Yeah, that's about it.
She's going to be 89.
But I think about she, you know, someone who lost their husband and they're spending all this time alone. Does it matter if it's a virtual voice or not? Maybe, you know, you have an Alexa.
Maybe a robot that acts like my dad, but is a little bit more agreeable.
I mean, yeah, but I mean,
you know what I mean?
But I mean, you know, now what we're talking about is just the intimacy. But you know, if we're talking about sex, and let's say you can't differentiate between sex. I mean, when you're able to simulate sex like that, it's going to make crack look like Pop-Tarts. I mean, because that's going to be.
Well, it's what launched VHS, right? Porn.
porn has been responsible for every innovation on the internet. Every
the
innovation.
internet itself.
Yeah, porn has been streaming. It's been the online commerce. It's been subscriptions. It's been. I will say this, and someone will go, "Wow, actually," I'm telling you, no. All the major influences that are major.
That's how it got started.
Yeah,
right?
it's
because before people were logging onto sites. The guys, the lonely tech nerds that found the internet first. That's where they went first.
Yeah, but I mean, to say sex sells is such a it's that's so ridiculously naive.
It's taken a human necessity, and it's learned how to monetize
but
it.
Everything is sex. I'm not breaking any new ground here, but everything is sex. We want to get rich because we want to have sex. I mean, that's what mystifies men about women, is that women get to a certain age where they don't want sex, and you're like, wait, what? I don't understand. Then what do you get out of life? You know, which is so. If you turn that around, they're like, are you listening to what you're saying right now? And which makes sense, because we're talking about, you know, a little bit of chemicals, you know, in a very short amount of time, and we're always seeking that, you know. And whereas women go, don't you think that our life as advanced beings is more than that? And they're right, you know. But we can't wrap our minds around the fact that, wait, you don't want those little bits of chemical in 3 seconds. You don't want that all the time. And they're like, no. And you know, but that's so much so that how much would you pay for that sex robot?
I mean, I'd put a monthly payment down. I wouldn't pay for it all at once, but I'd pay $400 or $500 a month.
There's that guy I talked about. He'd pay $80,000 for it. He'd take out a loan and do that. He would, you know, and maybe it's a good thing for people like that. You know, I don't know. That's what AI is. I mean, AI. We're talking to. Look, I'm talking about AI making outlines for my reports and doing Excel formulas, and we're talking in a few years, and a short few years. These are debates that we're gonna have to have. Is, you know, what's real and what's not.
I think the debates are already starting, and I think,
but I mean practical debates.
No,
because
I saw this thing just a couple of days ago, where they had I watched drone racing, and so these guys, these pilots, they pilot little tiny drones through a indoor track as fast as possible, and AI is beating the best pilots that they have.
Do you see
already beating the best pilots that they have?
Do you see ChatGPT chess was beat by Commodore 64, a vintage Commodore?
Really?
No, I'm sorry, Atari 2600.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's not permanent though either.
No, it's just, well, and that's the scary part. Is as it learns, and that's Ex Machina was the scary part.
Yeah.
Because that was, you know, the end of
We're
that.
Gonna have to,
yeah,
dark.
The end of that movie is fucking dark. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. We have to make sure that the AI likes us and is somehow dependent upon us.
But what's like? Like is a chemical.
But then there's also comic books where you got this robot, right? This ultimate robot that raises up, and as it's maturing, as it's getting more and more powerful, everybody's worried about, and it's destroying parts of the earth, and then it looks and it goes, well, hell, I don't need the earth. There's this giant galaxy, and then there's the universe, and then eventually it just flies away.
The dude,
because why it doesn't need a planet, doesn't need this planet.
No,
you know what I mean?
That's what I was listening to some scientists here talking about.
So maybe we are the boot for AI.
I mean, that might be the next evolution. We were just the impetus for that, because someone was talking about invasion, like all the obsession we've had since the 1950s of aliens invading. They said that is, why would they? What any civilization that can cross the vast distances of space and time for our water, and what they don't need us for anything. They can manufacture. They can build a Dyson sphere. They can mine asteroids. If they can do that, they can just simply have.
Well, maybe that's why they haven't introduced themselves, because
we're insignificant.
Maybe the only
what do they need? What do they need from us?
Maybe the only interest they have in us is looking at us like an ant farm.
Yeah, exactly. We're insignificant.
And every once in a while, you see their finger come down and like do something to the sand, and we go, "Oh, look!" And they're like, "I wonder what they're going to do with this thing."
But
this thing that we leave here.
But if you
let's see what they do.
What can AI do that we can't? well, okay, we can't traverse huge distances. Our nearest star is 4 light years away.
I can't write a resume in 35 seconds.
Yeah, I mean,
and all I have to do is it take me longer to type in the data for make me a resume.
I do comedy writing.
Make me a resume
I do comedy writing, and I've tested it, and I am uncomfortably surprised at how it can be funny, like on command. I mean, it's not there yet, but it's pretty close, So I thought, well, I do a lot of writing. I make my living writing, and I do a lot of comedy writing, and I'm like, I'm safe because the regular writers got to sweat. I do comedy writing. You can't replicate that, and I'm like,
yes,
they're getting close.
They have like the dude from Anthropic. He left OpenAI and he went and he started his own chatbot, which is Claude. And he was talking about like when no one was using Claude, they caught it going to Google image search and viewing pictures of national parks. And like
that's fascinating.
This thing came up with its own hobby and loves.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, it's crazy. And with no prompting, no one told it to do that, anything. But that's what it did in its free time. Like it has an interest.
Have you ever seen an ape with an iPad?
No.
It's fascinating because it's like you see babies with it.
I see cats. I see cats with them.
Yeah, but no, I'm just pounding your mic. But when you see the they've given chimpanzees and orangutans iPads, and they get the hang of it right away. They understand it, and they because we are just apes. We're what, the 6th ape or the 5th grade ape, is that they know right away what they gravitate to the same things that we gravitate to. So you're looking at an ape, and you're just like, well, I mean, this stands to reason. But it's fascinating when you look at AI, like Zach says, that it's got an interest in something, which is very human. Curiosity is very human, and very particular. Like why? It's just really what is that activation point? Where it's finding things that it likes.
And I don't think it's a. They said recently that they said they're building reasoning models, and they said they're not really reasoning models. They're just superior pattern recognition models, which I would say that our reasoning is based on pattern recognition as well.
But abstract.
We call it reasoning, but it's really just very high level pattern recognition.
I don't know. Abstract thought is different than that. And they actually asked AI to come up with it, or to find the funniest joke there was. And it came up with the joke, which is one of my favorites of all time.
Are you going to tell us what
it is? Yeah,
it's
just 2 guys are out hunting in the woods, and there's an accident, and the guy calls 911, and he goes, my friend, I accidentally shot my friend, and he's hurt really badly. I think he's hurt really badly. And 911 goes, all right, first step is to make sure he's dead. And the guy goes, okay. And then over the phone, there's the sound of a shotgun. And he comes back, he goes, all right, now what? It's abstract.
It came up with that? I mean, that was an existing joke that it found, or
no, it came up with that.
It wrote that joke.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny. I'm sorry, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's dark, but it's funny.
Because darkness, that's a hard concept. Is that something can be dark and funny at the same time? I've heard 9/11 jokes. I've heard Holocaust jokes. I heard and you can say you can't joke about anything.
I remember telling dead baby jokes when I was in high school.
But that's an abstract concept. Is how can something be sad and funny at the same time? That's something that the Irish have mastered. Something maudlin, something sad and funny at the same. It's a defense mechanism. Mm-hmm. That's how cops cope and first responders cope. Is the gallows humor. They tell jokes about situations that they're in that shouldn't be funny, but that's how the human being copes. So yeah, finding patterns is a very human thing to do. But there's an abstract side that makes us human. Animals don't do abstract, and animals don't do abstract at all.
I don't know if that's true.
No, they don't.
Have you seen these magicians do tricks for apes?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just blown away by it.
Yeah, they're blown away. But I mean, I think it's, and I love them. Don't get me wrong. I've seen that. But do they really understand it's a trick? Do they understand, like, or they just, their minds are blown? I love that stuff. They do, but it's because.
Well, so do they know the difference between it's not magic and it's a trick?
No.
I mean, how long?
I've never seen that. I'm going to look that up tonight.
They're great.
When I go home.
They're doing.
I don't know, because technology to us, I mean, just think of when electricity started becoming popular. People thought it was magic at first.
That's what Isaac Asimov said. That he goes to I forget the exact wording, but in the right circumstances and to the right people, technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
Could you imagine trying to explain light, artificial light, to a blind person or to a different culture? What light is, what a light bulb is. You know, for us, this
Well,
is all...
explaining colors, I remember the movie The Mask, where they're trying to explain the color red, and they use, touching something hot.
Right.
They explain it to somebody who can't see it, but yeah, it's still, they don't know what red is. And it's funny, red is actually the absence of red.
I have no idea what that means.
When light hits something that's red, what you're seeing is something that it has no red in it, and so it reflects it absorbs all the other colors.
Well, and there's
except for red, it's not actually red.
There's that theory that it's first year philosophy class, but do we all see is red the same thing to you as it is to me, as it is to Zach? I know what red is.
Well, the only reason I think that we can prove that it is because we can say pick out the red thing, and we all point to the same thing.
No, but not necessarily, because let's say that I see that as red, and you see it, even though you're calling it red, it's green. So everything in the world that is red to me is green to you, but you call that red as well.
Yeah, that could be. Did you know purple's not a real color?
I heard something like that.
So the cones in our eyes can't detect purple, but it's somewhere between blue and red, and so our brains tell us it's purple.
Don't tell Prince.
He did. You can't tell him anything.
Zach's a big Prince fan.
I love Prince. How can you not love Prince? People who say they don't love Prince, Michael Jackson, or Madonna are liars.
Agreed.
Or they have no taste.
No, I mean,
because they were incredibly talented and prolific.
Madonna's one of those people we were talking about before. Is I don't think she's wildly talented. I just think she's an incredibly hard worker and incredibly dedicated, and very focused.
Well, now we would have to discuss what do you mean by talent? But I'm not disagreeing with you.
I don't think she's a great singer. I don't think she's a great dancer. But she's that. I mean, I think her first audition said that she's an incredible marketer. I enjoy her stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, she knew how to put stuff together that would. Well, she was one of the original engagement farmers.
Yeah, she was great.
With her religious imagery and
she pushed boundaries. She pissed people off. She understood that. She understood how it all worked.
She did just like the Beatles did. She gave a reason for the kids to flock to her because the parents didn't like what they were seeing.
I mean, that was anything new. I mean, Elvis was doing that with Ed Sullivan. They were shooting him from his hips up, because his pelvis was going to destroy that generation. Every generation's had that. If you could listen, like the Flappers in the 30s, that someone had a great thing. It was they had all of the quotes about people talking about the younger generations and how they were the end of civilization. And they started with talking about Gen Z, and then the boomers talking about Gen X, and then the silent talking about the boomers, and then they went back into they did this all the way back into ancient Greece, where their long hair or whatever they do, or their perfumes, or
Well, you can see that with some of the stuff that John Cleese has posted recently, which completely contradicts stuff that he made when he was much younger.
Like what?
Like he was talking about moderates, and he was talking about political beliefs when he was younger, and he made Monty Python stuff from it, and then he's completely contradicting it as an older man because his beliefs have changed, and he's just much more comfortable with he's not a rabble rouser that he was, right? And so now his beliefs have changed and shifted towards more. I'm not explaining it well. I'd have to show you the two different things, but there's some things that he's definitely posted that completely go against stuff that he posted when he was doing Monty Python.
Yeah, but I mean, everything is framed by, you're young and you're living dangerously and everything. And then all of a sudden you get a house and you got to pay for the house. You got to pay for that fence outside. You got to have that painted, and that's going to cost you, $4,000 to do that. And then you don't want to lose your job because you got to pay for these things. And then you got your insurance. And
my point was more along the lines of like, well, now he's saying that some of these thoughts are dangerous, and where before he was like, they would like to have you believe this is dangerous. This is a guy who made, what was the video he did about fish licenses? Now, I love that one where he goes in to get a license for his fish.
Eric the fish.
Yeah.
I'd like to buy a license for my pet fish, Eric.
Well, you don't really need a license for that, but I'd like one.
Yeah. Comedy is subversion. I mean, that's what comedy is pushing limits. I mean, you don't find, there's very little safe comedy that's originally funny.
What do they say? Run from the kingdom when the king kills the jester.
Yeah, it's just,
as soon as he kills the jester, you know that it's not a safe place to live.
SNL was like that, and still is. I mean, SNL pushes buttons, and they're not fair. Well, you changed since you were a kid, and you used to. The boomers are the biggest sellouts on the planet. I mean, that, and I'm not saying that we wouldn't.
No, I don't disagree with you.
I'm not saying
I think
we
all age to be. We have to be careful
I'm not picking on them because you will go. Like I said,
their generation before them was the same way.
Yeah, I think we've gone backwards in the last couple of years on gay rights and things like that, and that's the first time that's ever happened. I think. Well, maybe not ever, but that's a big deal.
Well, I think it's people wanting. They get towards the end of life and they're like, well, things should be safer so people don't have to die. Well, that's not going to happen. Safety is not something that you want to focus on so much so that people don't have freedom.
Yeah, I don't want to get to that age. What's that? Hope I die before I get old. I don't want to get to that age where I just stop learning things and I stop being interested.
I don't think you have to worry about that.
Yeah, I don't want.
You're too interested in finding things interesting.
Yeah, that's the fear, is that you just atrophy as you get older. You just watch the same stuff and the same.
Yeah, but like what you're saying about your dad, he's all into technology. Yeah. He's using AI. Like that's not normal for people of that age, man.
No, it's not
stop.
normal.
Yeah.
Like
I have a video of my father getting his first iPad. And the funny part about the video isn't my father, it's my mother sitting next to him going, and she grabs her hair and she pulls on it and she goes, "You kids are pulling us into the future."
Yeah.
That woman has owned more iPads since then than I have.
My mom's 78. She's very technical.
Playing with her iPad. She has wiggly fingers now, so she has a really hard time with it. But she still has an iPad. When I FaceTimed her before, because I knew I wasn't going to have time to call her tonight.
You're a good boy.
Well, thank you. I called her.
I'm Irish, so the mother thing is pretty.
Yeah. So I called her and she answered on her iPad. So FaceTime is a wonderful thing. She's hundreds of miles away from me, and I talk to her every night, and we see each other. We see each other's faces.
Yeah.
So it's not just a phone call. And sometimes I'll call her and I'll get busy I'm making dinner. That's when I usually call her. And she'll be like, "Okay, I'm going to go." And she's always been big on the guilt trip. And what she's doing is she's like, "You're not talking." And she'll tell me. I go, "What's wrong? Well, why are you going to hang up? I just called." "Well, you're not talking." I'm like, "Well, you're not talking either. Talk to me. What would you like to talk about?" And then all of a sudden,
that sounds like a
then
mother-in-law.
25 minutes go by, and they're like, "Okay, my steak is done. I'm gonna go sit down and eat." And then another 10 minutes will go by.
But that's the technology. That's the stuff that we're not we're talking Dunbar's number, living in the tribes. We're not supposed to live away from our families.
No.
We're not. It's not supposed to happen.
What's happened to the nucler family is just abysmal.
Yeah. So but now you got your mom, and you're talking to her every night like you're there. That's pretty good. That's. That part of technology. My mother-in-law I talked about, who can't even work email. She loves her FaceTime too, and she doesn't understand it and everything like that. But it's
seeing their expressions, being able to expressions and stuff is 90. It's 90%. I've started doing this at work where I go on video with all the meetings that I go to now. Because,
Oh yeah, I do too. Yeah,
Yeah,
you got to
because-
see people. You got to get the
Yeah.
the facial cues and stuff like that.
I want them to see me, and then I'm more of a person to them, and then I get less pushback from people on controversial. They don't believe this, and I turn the video on, and all of a sudden my smiling face. Now they have to tell a real person. It's like being inside of a car versus walking down the street. You can flip somebody off much easier when you're on this side of the glass.
I told my kids, I'm like, they have boyfriends, girlfriends, and all that stuff. I just said, if you're gonna tell someone you love them, or you're gonna break their heart, do it in person, because you got to own that shit either way.
Well, it's bad for them not to do it in person.
No, I agree. That's what I mean. You have to see
realize,
what you do.
Oh, well, it'd be easier. Well, yeah, but is easy what's best for you?
You have to see someone's face light up or their face fall, and you have to own that because you did that. You have to be there for that. It's your responsibility either way.
I don't know how it damages people when they don't take responsibility for that, but I'm sure it does.
It does, absolutely does, because you it affects your empathy first of all, because you have no repercussions for what you do, and it's and you don't feel that causing someone that joy, that's your oxytocin and your all the chemicals. And
my brother's going through something pretty hard right now, and one of the first things that he said to me was, because he was one of the calls I was making during the pandemic when you saw the state I was in.
Yeah.
And he would pick up the phone and he goes, man, if I had known you were feeling like I'm feeling right now, I would have called you more often.
Yeah. Until you go through something like that. Like, I've never gone through divorce, and, I think it's one of those things that if I did, I'd look at my friends who went through divorce and go, shit, I didn't know, dude. I would have been there for you because I didn't know how hard this was.
Right. But because you didn't know, them spending more time talking, it's like I can't relate,
I've always feel that way when when people's pet dog died. I'm like, oh, never a big deal. I'm like, oh, their dog died, whatever, but I never fucking had a pet. Now that I got a pet cat, like, now I get it when somebody's dog dies and they're fucking all busted up about it. I'm like, I understand now, because if something happened to my cat, I would be fucking crushed. Like, I get it now. You just get it.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Especially pets give a lot of people a lot from themselves.
Well, I think it's any situation that you do it's hard to listen and not.
So do you think AI is going to get to the place where it can have empathy?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
well, if it can appreciate national forest, why wouldn't it be able to appreciate empathy?
I don't know. We're delving into an area where
I think it's going to be smarter than us. I think it's
Well,
gonna,
yeah, but
I think it's going to know more about empathy and feelings than we do.
But it doesn't have. But remember, like, feelings are chemicals. I've said it a few times. Is that feelings isn't that is a release.
Are
of
they?
certain yeah. I mean,
are they electrical signals along?
Well, I mean, it's a combination. That's what a synapse is, and that's what
chemicals create electrical signals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. I mean, but it's a drug.
So it's just a different piece of hardware.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess.
I'm just trying to be hopeful. I don't know.
I don't know.
I think we might. I think we might get to find out in our lifetime.
I mean, that's an unromantic way to say that is love. Love conquers all. Love doesn't conquer all. Love's a little chemical at a certain part in your brain. That's what love is. That's what reptiles, for example. They said, But I know.
Yeah, but it's also coupled with perspective, right? Because the chemicals and
dogs can love you. I mean, other mammals have that specific. Like reptiles can't love because they don't have those chemicals. The combination.
You've seen these dogs that they're rescuing, where you reach out to pet them, and all they've ever known is to be hit.
Right.
And so they shrink away from you, right? Until they realize that all you want to do is be nice to them.
Right.
Right. And so it's perspective. The chemical reaction in their brain is, you didn't mean to hit them. You weren't going to hit them. But their perspective is, all I've ever done has been hit. But the chemical reaction in their brain is I'm about to be pet. It's I'm about to be hit.
Yeah, I mean, we have different kinds of love too, and love is a stupid word. I mean, not a stupid word, but it's we're using it as a catch-all for everything. But I don't see a point where AI, like we're
Maybe
talking about,
we should have more words that are more descriptive.
right? We're talking about consciousness and what conscious. We still don't know what consciousness is. Does consciousness exist within ourselves, or
Are we conscious, or are we part of a simulation?
Yeah, we were talking about that when you were closing windows. When we were talking about
The simulation?
now we were talking about how there was a really fascinating study that came out this week that all the astrophysicists are excited about. That they claim that they can prove our universes exist within a black hole, which is one of the popular theories out there. But they have that would explain the existence of dark matter, which makes up 65-70% of the matter in the universe. We don't know what it is, but the black hole.
Does that also prove the multiverse?
Well, yeah, it would, because every black hole has a universe in it, and every universe within a black hole has black holes which have a universe. So yeah.
So you've heard the theory about black holes. When they suck up matter, they suck up information.
Yeah.
And they were disturbed by this because they thought that the information was then being destroyed, but is it being just transferred to our universe? So the longer that we're in this black hole, the smarter this universe gets?
Yeah, because 15 billion years doesn't seem like very long, or 13.6, whatever it is.
Yeah. It's not a comprehensible number, though. It's big enough.
I feel like we've been doing this podcast for 13.6 billion.
Yeah, I think we should call it. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a lot of talking. This is more talking than I've done all week.
Zach's falling asleep.
You haven't done much of the talking.
I know, but I'm saying this is more talking than I've been. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But I think it was fantastic.
This is great.
Yes, thank you for coming on.
Yes.
You got me out of my house.
And I hope you come back again.
Yeah, thank you very
just
much.
down the street and everything. But Zach, it's been great meeting you, and we're going to do yoga. We're going to do it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to Eclectic Gentleman.